there's no objection. We'll add those to the consent grouping as we move forward. We have opportunity now for public comment, and this is a chance for members of the school district to address the board. We ask that you speak from the podium, state your name, the group you represent if you are here speaking on behalf of the group, and we ask that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes. So is there anybody here who wishes to address the board? No? We're in our public comment portion of the meeting, and I'm wondering if there's anybody here who wishes to address the board for public comment. You're not here for public comment? No. Okay. Just didn't want to deny you the opportunity because you walked in the middle of my spiel. Okay.
It's Roger.
That's Mr. Black.
No, it's Charlie Black.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Looking at the top of the head.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think he's not here for this meeting. All right. We'll move on to approval of the minutes. Board members, you have in your packet the minutes of the regular meeting held on April 11th, 2011. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Moved by Jeff. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Noel. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes of the regular meeting held on April 11th, 2011, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Those minutes are approved. Announcements and recognitions. Dr. Richardson?
Okay, I've got several announcements and recognitions this evening. First of all, on Tuesday, April the 19th, our Northfield High School seniors, Ashley Malika, Emma Strahan. I'm sorry, Emma. And business teacher and DECA advisor Julie Woolner represented DECA at the Northfield City Council meeting to receive a $550 fundraising check from Waste Management for the Northfield Youth Recycling Green Team Program. DECA appreciates Waste Management in support of Northfield High School and the DECA program. So again, that's a actually great new program that Julie has worked with to get started, and already starting to see some immediate benefits coming back. Second, Governor Dayton has declared last week as Minnesota's Student Service and Service Learning Week. As a Learn and Serve grantee, Sarah Swan McDonald and Jen Winterfeld were given the opportunity to share some of the good work that's happening in Northfield. Tony Seidel's third grade classroom at Greenbelt Park made the top story on the Minnesota Department of Ed website. So if you check in on the Minnesota Department of Ed website, you'll see a smiling classroom full of students. And so be sure to check out that story. Just a little bit about it. The story is titled, and again, it's the lead story. It's called Science and Engineering and Conservation. Oh my. Focusing on Minnesota's academic standards about the water cycle, plants, and weather. Mr. Seidel's Greenvale Park Elementary third graders eagerly jump into learning in creative ways every day. The class is developing a system to collect rainwater from the school roof in rain barrels, and they transport and pump that water into collection barrels used by the gardeners to water their plants at the garden. This project will save lots of time, money, and most importantly, conserve water. MDE has identified Tony's curriculum as being on the cutting edge of new engineering standards in science that will be put into practice next year. So nice little piece for Northfield and for service learning. We also have several other announcements coming from Bridgewater tonight. First of all, annual Earth Day Assembly was held last Friday at Bridgewater. Students read tips about reducing, reusing, recycling. The students will participate in the Great Garbage Grab this Wednesday, where they will try to be good to the environment by picking up trash that others have discarded. And it seems to me the last visit I had during the Great Garbage Grab, I mean, it was literally hundreds of pounds of garbage that was collected by various members of the green teams there. Also, there was a learning fair that will be held on Friday, May 6th at Bridgewater. Student projects will be displayed for viewing. Student council will be serving a hot dog supper. There will be a book fair and silent auction with many items to bid on. Also, Bridgewater student Elena Marie Krings in Mrs. Holden's class won first place in the VFW Americanism contest. She had drawn and colored a Statue of Liberty. Elena will be presented with a $15 prize on May 11th at the VFW Women's Auxiliary meeting. Again, congratulations to Elena. Also, this week is Administrative Professionals Appreciation Week. So for all of our administrative assistants and clerical staff who do work in the district office and in all the building offices, thanks for all you do to help the buildings run smoothly. Danita.
Special thanks to Danita Delzer. Makes us
And,
all look good.
and finally, next week is Teacher Appreciation Week, and Northfield teachers are obviously outstanding folks with big hearts who work wonders for our kids every day. And so thank you to our Northfield teachers. Okay, and I think that's everything that I have anyway.
All right. Anybody else? Anything to add? Want to remind folks of Arts a la carte coming up this Friday evening at the high school, 5 to 8.
5 to 8.
And the spring play is opening that evening as well. But Arts a la carte, excellent opportunity to see visual art, performances by musicians, and edible art contest, fun for all ages, and a great opportunity to enjoy arts in our school district. So 5 o'clock Friday at the high school. Okay, anyone else? All right, on we go. Our first item for discussion or report is the Sibley Elementary School PLC presentation. Principal Scott Sanis is here.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Well, thank you. We have a kind of a cool presentation to share tonight. Thanks for the opportunity first, and I'm joined here tonight by Missy Spitzak and Rhea Merkins, who are here to answer any questions you have after the DVD presentation. But they are also a part of a third grade team that includes Dawn Jandro, Kelly Johnson, and Katie Parks. So the 5 of them were recorded during part of their PLC time and during part of their teaching time, and they also did some interviews, and that all was put together in a DVD, and I want to thank Amy C. from the middle school for putting that together. She came over and did all the taping, all of the editing, and put together a nice presentation tonight. When I shared our continuous improvement plan with the board this past fall, I shared the site improvement objectives. I just want to touch base about where we're at with those, or what they are, first and foremost. We have 2 content-oriented objectives, and they are all students will demonstrate measurable gains in reading fluency and comprehension, and all students will demonstrate measurable gains in mathematics. And while the objectives are content area specific, they are pretty broad objectives, and they're broad for a reason, and that's so the grade levels can adjust as needed. And you'll see during this presentation that the 3rd grade team did just that. Before we jump into it, the PLC, along with the block scheduling that you approved about a year ago, have really allowed us to regroup students in different ways. And second, the PLC is data-driven and it's results-oriented. And these 3rd grade teachers, along with all teachers, analyze data on a continual basis, and they analyze student work on a continual basis, and they come up with a strategy to best meet the needs of the students that they have in their classroom. And by taking the time to use the data, I believe, they believe, I think we all believe that they're able to make better decisions in the long run. And finally, the problem solving that occurs during a PLC greatly benefits our students in all of our classrooms. And when we presented the idea about block scheduling and flex grouping to the board about a year ago, I said the plan would allow us to differentiate instruction and meet the needs of students in a way where we're accelerating the learning of all students. No matter what quartile they fit into, no matter what group they fit into, we're accelerating the learning for all students. And we stopped using the word remediate and use the word acceleration for all. Because we're flexibly grouping at least 4 times a week in grades 1 through 5 at Sibley, I really believe we're off to a great start here with the differentiation and acceleration. So without further ado, I think we'll jump into the DVD.
we do our flex grouping the last 35 minutes to 40 minutes of our day, Monday through Thursday. And everyone leaves feeling good about what they're learning and feeling successful. And it's just nice to see them leaving with smiles on their faces. Some of them even sometimes leave the room skipping, and it's just really neat to see.
Well, first I wanted to talk about how we arrived at the goals that we're working on this year. And a big part of that was through our assessments using the NWBA math test. What we really noticed was the lowest area for most students in all 4 of our 3rd grade classes was the algebra strand on the math test. So we decided to make our goal for starting in this fall that 75% of students would show a growth in their math test score either equal to or greater than half of their targeted growth by the time we took our math test in January. From there, we started using those assessments and lots of other assessments to guide our instruction.
In our group, we're still, like, the way I'm kind of planning things is, I mean, here was our pre-test for numbers. So, then I'm trying to find these results. I was like, okay, we're starting at the beginning. And now we're through the first time, we're on to here, we're on to multiplication facts and algorithms in our group. And I know that everyone's taught those things, so it'll be more just review. Which will be perfect for this group. Last week we spent mostly practicing multiplication facts and learning, tricks and fact power and stuff like that. So today we're going to start, and I'm just going to focus on, I don't know, you guys might think of it as traditional, and then lattice.
I think so.
You go not really.
Last week we did a lot of the lattice, and it was kind of fun because probably about half of them knew how to do it, but there were kids in there that hadn't had it yet in their regular math class. So the kids that had had it were, pretty confident in showing them how and helping them. So that was kind of fun. And we did a lot of traditional multiplication as well.
We're only going to practice lattice and traditional, but today we're going to practice lattice math. The first part of our lattice math today is making sure that we know how to draw our grid. Somebody raise their hand and tell me how many digits are in their top number. See one person who knows how many digits are in their top number. Abby, there's 3. So when we make our lattice grid, we have to make sure that there are places for 3 numbers, 1, 2, 3, across the top.
We're doing multiplication with what we use 3 by 3 digit. So kind of just up in the digit amount.
What algorithm are they doing?
I did all 3.
Okay.
To give them choice, but at the end of the day, most of them like lattice.
Okay.
Which I'm surprised by because I think with the traditional method, that's what I'm used to. You just put the 0 there to apologize to the number that you forgot. You know what I mean? Funny tricks to do it, but the lattice, I think there's something novel about having that square and then being able to fill in a little
It's a
bit.
puzzle.
Yeah. Sold. Sold is a key word. Underline, please. 138 glass beads and 47 clay beads. How many beads did Jeff have left? Take a second with him. Is it okay to reread? Yeah, it's important to reread the problem. Because some of you, maybe your mind started to wander and you're thinking of other things. Get yourself focused back in. This is not a timed test.
You should have. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 2 is 8. 864. One more to get us warmed up.
One difficult task has been to gather resources that are both grade level appropriate, ability level appropriate, and in the line of the strands that we're working towards. So, for example, if you're working with kind of an upper level math group on number and operations, making sure that you're not stepping on the toes of the 4th grade resources, trying to pull from upper level items, but then also making sure that it fits within the strand of the math test that we're focusing on. So creating pre-tests for the students to figure out what they already know. We started giving everyone the same pre-test at the start, and then we decided that wasn't very helpful information. information because kids were doing on the pretest just what we thought they would based on their ability group, and we thought a pretest that is more specific to an ability group is more helpful for us as teachers to know how to teach and what to teach.
What do you think would be the best thing, if we just have a few days here before the test next week, what would be the best thing for fractions for them to be exposed to?
They need to be able, because I haven't had time to get to it, and Rhea and I talked a few weeks ago in my morning message, I have a math question every day. So that's where I've been throwing fractions in. So I said things like, Mark has 24 marbles. He gives John 1/4 of them. How many marbles does Mark have left?
Okay.
So they need to be able to know like what is 1/4 of something and then solve the problem.
Of the apples to make a pie. How many apples did she have?
Okay, anything that's shaded, and then you're making a fraction with the shaded shapes. So is the numerator going to be the shaded shapes, or all of them together? What do you think?
What we had done was grouped our students according to their algebra strand score, and we had 4 different groups. We had students who were struggling the most. The next tiles all the way up to students who were achieving the most on that specific score. Each teacher used the Descartes list of skills for students that was kind of given to us through Viewpoint software and the NWEA website that showed skills that students needed to continue to build, skills that they need to be introduced to, and skills that they needed to be advanced on. So there were 3 different levels, and it all targeted into their range of their score from that strand of the test. And that's how we focused our instruction.
Yeah, what operation do we use when we hear the word and? I have 2 apples and 5 apples. What will I do to find my total? Like, plus or add. So you need to add the glass bead with the clay bead. Today,
What our breakdown currently is also doing multiplication, but we're doing multi-digit. So we're doing 2 by 2 or 3
They
by
were
2.
talking about that in my class, they're excited.
Yeah, they're loving it. And really I'm doing a little mini lesson, keeping it short, and then having them work together in partners and really working together and teaching each other. And then if they're both partners are confused, then they come and ask for help. But they're really getting it and they're loving it.
let's try it.
Alright, which one are you stuck on?
The other thing we've kind of worked through is just class numbers. If you're putting kids in classes based on where they're scoring, based on their strand, that doesn't always mean equality in terms of how many kids are in each class.
I don't know, but I have a lot of really high math kids in my group, not so much reading, but math, and they come back from her class so fired up.
I'm just so glad. I just remember the beginning of the year when we were all so stressed out, and I was like, okay,
It's working.
this is
It's
working,
working.
it's like the best thing.
Because they're being challenged, I love that.
Especially
I love them, they
if
come in and
teachers
show me
start
all
to
the
go.
work, they come running from the door.
We'll work on muffins. Calling management. But the same goes for all of your classes too. There was singing apparently in your class one day, and I think
Dancing.
the kids that are maybe struggle a little more with
They're
math,
feeling finally
feeling
like
it.
they do feel like a rock
Yeah.
star because they like got everything right on something someday, and that never happens for them, and I'm just like,
So I'm just saying, I think it's a great
Yeah.
idea that we're blending
Well-
all 4 groups at the end of the day.
And kids, just as much as like adults, connect with different people in different ways. So for them to have a different teacher teaching math might give them a different perspective too.
I like that we haven't switched it up, like, I haven't taken a different group at all this year, because I think,
Oh, that you've always stuck with.
you know what I mean,
ability
those
levels
kids
and
come to
everything.
me,
Yeah.
like, it's like a safe place, you know what I mean, they're just like, who's this kid? Okay.
Yeah,
The
she
whole
knows.
point was to end the day on a positive.
Yeah. Well, we could do,
Today is I'm going to try and stump you. I've taken the practice test and given you the wrong answers. And you need to figure out what I did
make our groupings and to help us guide our instruction on the content that these students needed, we used assessments in a lot of different ways. One way that most teachers used assessment was, this is just an example of a pre-test that I had made for my group in which students were struggling the most. And the questions I took from here came right from the Descartes standards that showed what they needed to know to be proficient on the math test and make their growth. After I created my test, each different class with different levels of students looked at this as a base and built from there according to their student scores and adapted and created a new pre-test according to what was appropriate for their students. We use that as a pre-test, and that same test will be given as a post-test. Besides the pre-test and a post-test, we also had many examples of weekly formative assessments, just a little exit slip on skills that we've been working on that week or the week prior to really let us know if that student is gaining that concept or not, and really where we should go next in our instruction. Because that's the ultimate goal. We don't want to keep moving if they're not ready for it.
They were not it, but I like how you noticed the biggest number first. But then you kind of didn't notice the rest of them in order. So, can someone give us a lifeline and help us out here? Emmett?
How about B?
Okay, you think it's B. Why?
Like something about focusing on fractions. I'm just thinking like, okay, we spent all week in my D&D doing multiplication facts and gearing up for items this week, and I know I'm behind you guys. I just don't know how I can throw fractions at them right now when there's so many other things. But maybe I don't know. I need an opinion
And
there.
maybe that's okay with your group. Maybe this isn't perfectly into what we were thinking about last week. And fractions are going to be on the MCAs, and maybe we just need to take that on ourselves. But for the math test at the end of May, maybe we should do the math workshop, and one of us should do a workshop on fractions.
Here's some things, just ideas that I had, and I don't need to say I love one of them or no. I thought like geometry puzzles would be a really great one, like pentagrams, things like that. Like those puzzles that we don't spend a lot of time with, that are those really.
Becky Hart has a lot
Yeah.
of that stuff.
Then like a data one, where maybe they're like conducting a survey and then thinking about their data and what are the best graphs to display that data and make the graphs.
What I want to do is a nature graphing.
Sure.
So it would be an outdoor class where they would.
We also have a reading goal. Our reading goal we arrived at in January, again through use of the NWA math test data, and then through talking with Mary Haney, a woman who came into our district to help us think of some different strategies and ways to help students grow in their growth. And one way that she suggested is that the very best way to get students to grow as a reader is to be reading at their independent instructional or their independent reading level. So we decided to use the Reading A to Z resource, and we're focusing on the strand of comprehension, fiction and nonfiction, coming from the math test. And we use that score and students' DRA scores to help decide which level they were at. So the best way to do that would be to have 3 groups with true teachers addressing the most neediest students, and have more one-on-one support with them, with those teachers. Within those groups, there's guided reading happening, independent reading, partner reading. Students are doing lots of comprehension quizzes and activities, and there's lots of assessments, formative and summative assessments being used. Most specifically on skills addressing students identifying the main idea. This is just an example of something, reading a small passage and answering a few questions about main ideas and supporting details is something that we've found to be really helpful in helping pull out those big ideas for comprehension in our reading. We're also waiting to see our growth there from that goal, and the SMART goal there was 75% of students making greater than or equal to their targeted growth by the spring math test.
I was impressed with the strategies from all the classes of saying, and they're good at memorizing, saying, okay, underline the first sentence of every paragraph. Okay, they all did that.
Then she's like, did they write the MCA booklets?
Did you watch them? They were totally
I want to make sure they're doing it,
Yeah.
These are the rushers. So it's good to kind of
you know what I mean, task accomplished.
Where are we next? And it's the rushing
Yeah.
thing, but it paces them. So it was cool.
Which strategy seemed to be the hardest for them?
Off the checklist or just in general
Just in
comprehension?
general, because they're really strong readers, so, you know, what seems to be the thing that's...
Probably,
Inferring.
no, maybe summarizing, because they want to retell the whole story.
Yeah.
So to pick out key points for them was kind of, and I think too, there's different, you know, skills for the different letters, because one of the quizzes the kids had yesterday, they came up to me and it said, it was more of an opinion thing. You had to infer from what you had read, like, why was Allie so upset about her grandmother losing the keys, or something like that?
Yeah.
And she said, I can't find the answer. And she had been looking, and skimming, and highlighting, and underlining, and she said, it's not in there. I said, well, okay, sometimes the answer's not in the text. You have to think about it.
Based on what
And then
you've
she's
read.
like, oh, you know.
Class reading is just another time where students are really integrated throughout and they get to meet new people and new peers and just make new relationships. So that's been a really great thing. And then the last benefit that I have really noticed is the leadership skills that are built in classes. Students that normally would never get a chance to answer a question are in a group with like-minded students, and they all maybe need that extra weight time, and so they have the chance to speak up or to teach a peer something that they now understand. Where normally in their regular math class or reading class, there are other students who are the leaders or who normally know the answer first. And so that's really huge.
Okay, now to 94.
Had to create one of your own on the back side.
After the math test in the winter, our students' highest mean average was actually in the algebra strand. We went from a 192.7 to a 204, so we were pretty excited about that. And 75% of our students met or exceeded their targeted growth in the algebra strand. So we could really tell that our hard work teaching algebra during our flex grouping time really went well for us. We were very proud of our students. From there, we've set up a few new goals. We're working on numbers and operations because after looking at the test scores from the winter, we decided that our numbers and operations strand was the lowest. So now we're focusing on that, and we're excited to see our results after the spring math test. For reading, we set up a new goal focusing on reading comprehension and fluency. So 2 days a week we meet and work on our numbers, and 2 days a week we meet and work on different reading comprehension strategies, working on our fluency, and kids are reading books that are at their reading level.
I would just like to take this opportunity to say thank you for supporting the PLC time each Wednesday morning. It really has benefited our students, and they've grown in many ways, both academically and socially. And without that time in the morning to collaborate with my team, it really wouldn't be possible. It's made a big difference this year in our students and their achievement. So thank you for supporting the PLC time.
Excellent. That was really fun. And I mean, these PLC presentations just keep getting better and better as we learn more of kind of the meat of what you do and how it translates into the classroom. So thank you for letting Amy in to record all of your strategizing and your work in the classroom. Anybody have questions or comments for our teachers there? Anybody? Julie?
One comment is thank you for being so enthusiastic about the flex learning groups, because I know, when Scott had presented it originally and then when he came back for site improvement, we realized there's some extra prep needs that you have to do, and it is some extra work. So we appreciate you guys embracing it as you have. And my question for Rhea, you alluded to math workshop. What is that?
Well, we're just thinking of something a little different for the end of the year because we've been in such a routine. The last 35 to 40 minutes of each day has really been the same since the beginning of the year. And the end of the year always gets a little hard for everyone, and so just changing it up a little bit. And we already do readers workshop and writers workshop. And so maybe having a time for math workshop we thought the students would like. And so each of us are going to pick a topic and create a class that lasts about a week. And we're going to keep the students in their flex groups and then rotate each of the groups through our workshop. So making some alterations depending on that group and their abilities and kind of their needs. And so, for example, I'm going to do a math nature class, and that will be a week long, and I'll have each of the 4 different quartiles throughout that workshop time, and then the other teachers will teach other classes. And that will be our last month of school.
That's great. Thank you.
Anything else? Did you have anything? I have a couple questions. You talked about the need for better resources to be able to use for the different groups of students. And so you're creating those yourself?
Most of them, especially like the assessments, the pre-tests and the post-tests. And part of that is because our instruction is so tailored to student needs individually, and the information that we get from map test scores and using Descartes. But another part of it is we just didn't know what to be using. So we really have, I think, assessments been creating most of our own. In terms of other resources, we've found a couple of things. I know the Evan Moore, it's just a company that makes some like daily word problems. That's one thing we've been using. That was an area where we had to make sure, because there was other grade levels who had always included that into their curriculums. So then when we started doing it, it got kind of like, they've already seen this before. So we had to try and figure out ways to work around that.
We found a lot of things online as well, but it's really a day-to-day searching for things to use.
And then are you archiving that somehow so that other PLCs and other buildings can benefit from the work, the research that you've done, or developing the assessments that you've done?
Well, we definitely should put in the district folder, which I don't think we have yet. On our just Sibley 3rd grade shared folder, I think all of us save things in there.
Yeah.
So I think before we move to maybe saving it for the district, just because someone who's not on our team wouldn't really know what they're looking at, is to really like explain folders by levels or topics or something like that. But that's a really great idea that I think.
And two, it's really tailored to the students we have now. So even thinking of next year, we may not even use this same
Yes, yeah, and I
thing.
can appreciate that, but at the same time, I think that's one of the big benefits of PLCs is that, you dig deep and you do all this work, and maybe it's not next year, but maybe the year after that, a 3rd grade team will have students who are similar to yours and could use those resources. So I kind of see that as the next level of PLC work in the district, is to make sure that the good work that individual PLCs are doing is of benefit to the larger population of students and teachers.
I agree. I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. We would appreciate it too.
Yeah, well. Okay, anybody else? All right, thank you so much. Excellent
Thank you.
report, thank you. I have a question for Scott and perhaps Dr. Richardson. Is there any hope of moving to a growth model instead of the snapshot with the MCAs? Or is all of that awaiting Representative Klein's Education Committee's reworking of NCLB?
Dr. Richardson?
Well, from the last discussion that I had with John Klein, while I think he very much understands the benefits of a growth model in comparison to a snapshot, I think the earliest we could hope to see that will be sometime in the middle of the 2011-12 year, which means it probably won't be in a place where we can actually think about implementing until 12-13. But I think he very much has indicated an understanding of the idea that instead of doing this snapshot measure of different cohorts each year, that we should be looking at growth measures that measure students from the beginning to the end of the year, and obviously with formative assessments in between, so you're doing kind of touching base and benchmarking all the way through the process, that's a much more realistic way of understanding how kids are growing. So I think there's a real sense that is a direction that at the federal level there's real interest in doing that. Right now, however, everybody is pretty much lockstep into No Child Left Behind, and will be until they actually redo the law. And in the meantime, I think the other thing that John had made very clear as we talked the last time is he is anticipating that in the fall of 2011 there will be likely somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 85% of the schools and districts in the country will be in needs improvement, because we're moving towards that 2013-14 when 100% of every subgroup must be proficient at grade level before a building is not in needs improvement. So it's kind of like there's an understanding of where we need to be, but moving exceedingly slow in terms of that piece. I think the other thing that he's indicating on the flip side is that there are some members of his committee that are really more in the mode of saying, let's figure out how to abolish the Department of Ed and eliminate all of it. And so I think he's trying to do a very fine balancing act of trying to keep people moving along and understanding that people are in very different places across the committee in terms of that work so far.
Okay. So we won't worry about the politicians. Just continue to do your good work with the students you have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, thank you. Excellent report. Thanks. Okay, we're on to the proposed 11-12 food service budget, and we have our Child Nutrition Director, Pam Haupt, here.
Hi, everyone. And I just want to say, too, that's great work that you guys are doing at Sibley. That was a great presentation. But on to the ever so exciting child nutrition budget and program highlights. I just want to start out by reviewing some of our initiatives this year. One of our big initiatives was to expand our farm to school program by making more local partners and purchasing more local products to serve with our school meals. We did accomplish that. We gained 3 new partners, so now we have a total of 8 local partners, and then we purchased $4,500 more this year for our farm to school local products. We are currently working with St. Olaf and Carleton on a grant, and basically the grant is directly tied into our farm to school efforts. On the St. Olaf side, they're working to put together a local directory, so anybody who would want to partner with a school district who's like in a 50-mile radius of where we are located, you know, setting up what products they have to offer, you know, the timeline for those products, can they deliver to all 5 of our sites, and just a lot of the parameters that we really need to be able to pursue a partnership. So the folks at St. Olaf, some students who are seniors, are busy working on the directory. Another group of students from St. Olaf is also currently working on some marketing materials for each site, particularly the elementary schools they're focusing on right now, with some posters that actually, very simple posters, like a picture of the actual farmers at their location with some of their products and very simple nutritional messaging so that we could just switch those in and out as we feature their products on our menu. So more right at the point of service for the kids, right in the cafeteria, also tying in with the PA announcements and morning announcements. And then on the Carleton side, we're teaming up with them in a biology class, actually. And all of the Carleton students, as just part of their research for what they're creating, came and ate lunch, and they picked different sites. So all 5 of our sites, they came and ate lunch the week after spring break. And then they are working on some nutrition education activities, and particularly games at the elementary level, to again tie back into our whole farm to school efforts and the nutritional messaging back into the nutrition education piece. So I hear they have some draft proposals. I have not seen them yet, but I'm excited to see them. The IOM, the Institute of Medicine, we talked last year when I gave this presentation about the committee that was put together by the USDA to make recommendations for the child nutrition reauthorization. One of their recommendations, well actually two, was to increase the amount of fruit and vegetable servings at lunch for every grade level. We this year decided to go ahead and start implementing those recommendations in an effort to, number one, just serve students more fruits and vegetables on a daily basis, and number two, just to be able to, hopefully they would satisfy, especially at the upper grade levels, the need for more food, because at times, depending on what the menu is, you know, we're always hearing that kids are hungry and I'm still hungry and I need to buy a second entree because I'm hungry. So to try to balance those things, we have started to do that. In a couple minutes we're going to see pictures, but we completed a 2-year Sibley serving line and kitchen renovation. It was really great work. When I first got here, Sibley School had the original walk-in cooler that was still working and freezer, but literally on their last leg, and the freezer was way too small. So again, we doubled the size of the walk-in freezer, replaced it, have a whole new walk-in cooler, state of the art. We can easily roll carts in and out, keep all the food off the floor and stored properly. And then on the serving line side, that's what you're going to see a picture of in a couple minutes. You know, they had a wall that was a half wall that was hanging down from the ceiling, so you literally would have to like bend to be able to make eye contact and talk to the kids and see the kids. And then we didn't have any hot or cold holding equipment for all of our food. So just a really great thing to be able to have a fun balance and invest that back into our program to make it as successful as possible. And the Greenville Park side, they as well were missing any hot holding and cold holding equipment. So they just had a stainless steel countertops. In their case, though, we did get lucky that we were able to drop in hot wells over on their side. So it's much less of an investment, but we did get that done this year, and you're going to see a picture in a minute. Again, we purchased an alarm software to hook up with Kevin, the Director of Buildings and Grounds, the alarm system that the custodians really review on a daily basis for the heat and the boilers, and to connect all of our walk-in storage locations to that same system. So again, we can be aware quicker than just a manual process, actually having somebody run out and check what the temperature is and figure out that one of our storage locations is not keeping temperature. We work with the Midwest Dairy Council on the Fuel Up to Play 60 grant at both the middle school and at Greenville Park Elementary. Again, just trying to promote not only healthy eating habits, but encourage kids to get 60 minutes of physical fitness a day, and mostly to drink more milk, so to add more calcium to their diets. At Greenville Park, we also piloted a healthy snack cart for grade levels 1 and 2. And I see Mr. Kraft was just here. I think he left. But we're meeting tomorrow to discuss rolling that out to the whole school next year. So we're going to be pursuing that for next year. We've had new menu offerings at all grade levels that include like our Harvest Crust whole grain pizza, our Red Label all chicken breast, unbreaded chicken, some unbreaded chicken nuggets, whole grain French toast sticks. I mean, we've just had a large supply of new menu items at every grade level. You know, some have gone over very well. Some, you know, I got to be honest with you, not as well as I had hoped. But they always say that it takes, you know, several menu rotations before you really get to know whether or not the kids are going to like something new. So anyway, just pre-Sibley, this is what Sibley looked like when I arrived here. And then just, that's what it looks like now. So with that wall gone and all their new serving equipment with lights, and it's just, it's very nice. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, I want to make sure that you get to see it. And here's Greenbelt Park. So if you can imagine, you know, just all they had was the countertops. And now where that milk cooler is darting out from the T in the middle of the serving line is actually a cold hold rolling piece of equipment that we moved from the middle school, and then we modified it using some of the folks from Kevin Larson's team that just are great assistants to us at all times, that they lowered it to the correct height for the elementary students. So we also have another piece of equipment that's not identified in this picture. So the child nutrition reauthorization, also known as the Healthy School Kids Act, which President Obama signed into law in December of 2010. And I was talking to Stephanie about this because, you know, the law itself is 85 pages of regulatory words. The summary for the law, I'm not going to read that to you or go over every detail, so I'm going to try to hit the high points. The summary for the child nutrition folks particularly is 13 pages, so shrinks down a little bit, but here's basically what was signed into law. Again, it's proposed. The commenting period on the law just closed on April 13th, and we can talk about that in a minute because the Minnesota Directors Group formed a comment and then submitted it by individual school district. But the final rule, you know, that will probably not even be out for 18 months, so probably not even at the start of next school year. Possibly in the middle of the school year, or maybe not until, you know, closer to the start of the previous, the 13-14 school year. But increase the amounts and varieties of fruits, vegetables, whole grains. You know, there's specific parameters around dark vegetables and orange vegetables, legumes, you know, so that is all new. Specific, again, targets raising the serving size of fruit from a half cup to 3/4 cup, from vegetables, you know, to a half a cup to sometimes a cup, which is something we already do in most cases, especially when we serve lettuce type items as the vegetable choice. And then the whole grain required next year to be, all of your bread type options have to be 50% whole grain, but if it goes into law the way it's proposed, it'll be 100%. So that'll be a big change. Increase the focus, or set a minimum and maximum for calorie levels. There used to be basically, depending on your age group, just 1 calorie level. And as we know, the activity level for students can be so different and so far apart. So now there's a range, which is great. Increase the focus on reducing the saturated fat and sodium. Sodium is the big thing that everybody's talking about. It's on the news and on blogs, and because the sodium requirement is really much less than somebody who's on a reduced sodium medical prescribed diet. So, you know, and I don't know if any of you have ever been on that, but if you start to eat food with very little sodium, a lot of the flavor does also go. So we are working creatively to try to figure that out and get salt-free seasonings in and put that on some of our chicken and beef and test that out with the kids. Again, the final rule is not for 18 months. In the meantime, we have been doing all these things, so we feel good about that. Are expected to be making gradual changes to, again, reduce sodium and sat fat, use more whole grains, increase the availability of fresh fruits and vegetables, and use skim and low-fat milk. Some schools still were using 2%. We were not one of them. No, we haven't been doing that for a while. So again, you know, when I say the major impacts of the reauthorization, there's actually quite a few of them, but I guess the ones that are closest to all of us, so probably most relevant, is to review of the local policies on meal charges and like how much we charge normal paying students for school meals, and also the direction on alternative meals. So again, if students have a negative balance, what is our obligation to them on any given day? So that's really what that refers to. The federal government, for the first time in 30 years, is supposed to increase the amount of revenue that we would receive on each school lunch meal by 6 cents. So, and again, the equity in the school lunch pricing requires schools that would require us to charge normal paying students the difference between the free meal reimbursement and the paid reimbursement. So again, the $2.72 is the free meal reimbursement that we receive currently from the USDA, and then 26 cents for a paid meal. So the total of that, when you do the math, is $2.46. So we're going to talk in a minute because we can gradually get up to that number. But currently for secondary, we're at $2.20, and for elementary, we're at $2.05. So it's big. Actually, is a big impact. It increased the USDA review requirement. So right now our programs are reviewed on a 5-year cycle. It's going to change that to every 3 years. So I guess, I don't know, somebody just talked about the Department of Education going away. I don't know. I hope that doesn't happen because they're going to need more people to get that accomplished. The USDA has to develop nutrition standards for all foods that are sold in schools. So that means any competitive foods. So any foods that we would consider to be a la carte. They're going to actually develop nutrition standards that nationwide schools are going to have to meet. Again, the fruit serving size would increase at both breakfast and lunch. This was one of the concerns from the Minnesota Directors Group, because at breakfast, kids don't have, they're even more compressed for time, and their ability to eat more fruit, you know, it depends on the fruit, but obviously more whole fruit or, you know, can be very challenging. So we were worried about the waste involved with that requirement. Again, all grains will need to be whole grains in 2 years, 50% now. The weekly menu requirement, again, we talked about that for dark green, orange vegetables, and legumes would be written right into law. And then we talked about the sodium. So some of the financial trends, and I'm sure I don't have to tell you guys most of these, just as consumers who are out at the grocery store and out at the gas station filling your cars up with gas, the cost of all food has been increasing all year in all categories, and just getting food here to our door with fuel surcharges and so on and so forth, the cost of commodities. We've had a big financial trend. There's the impact, the changes. I made a number of changes with our a la carte offerings, both in 09-10 and then in 10-11. And the impact of those changes has been dramatic. So on the revenue side. Our participation in school lunch, you know, we've had some great impacts like at the high school, but again, it's all balanced out with the decrease in a la carte. We've had an increase in the mainline lunch participation at the high school that's been significant. So the participation in breakfast as a district has gone up for a couple of reasons. Number one, probably, is just the middle school. Jeff was behind me, but they've been a great partner with us over at the middle school to try to really make breakfast accessible to kids coming off the buses and being able to maybe watch the morning announcements in the cafeteria. And that's had a dramatic impact on the breakfast participation at the middle school. And, you know, the other great thing is we're really serving kids who most likely didn't have the opportunity to eat at home. So it really has been great. We made an investment in real silverware. This year that investment in real silverware was actually covered by the composting grant. Again, Kevin Larson wrote that grant and is spearheading it. So that has been great. The only trouble is we are having a few issues with throwing away silverware. They say if you use it 8 times, then it was worth the initial investment. At the elementary level, it really has not been an issue at any of the elementary schools. So, you know, they're doing a good job, and the kids are doing a good job, and the teachers, you know, instructing them, make sure that it doesn't get thrown away. The middle school and the high school, obviously, there's just a lot more kids and a lot more congestion at the time that they're all trying to. So we're always trying to work through different solutions and better solutions to make it easier for them to discard their silverware properly in our wash tub versus in the garbage. So we don't have to continually be reinvesting in silverware. Again, we talked about the farm to school locally last year and just the $4,500 more purchases than the previous year. Back in November, actually right after school started, I made the decision to actually reduce our overall labor hours just based on my meals per labor hour at each location that were really not measuring up to what the national standards are for meals per labor hour. And so just looking at the year and seeing some of the trends both in revenue and expense, it certainly wasn't an easy decision, but you know, retrospect always serves you better, and I'm glad that at that time I made that decision to reduce basically 8.7 hours a day from our FTE, so 3 positions. And some of the recommendations, just the high-level recommendations for next school year, I am recommending a meal price increase of pretty much 15 cents for both breakfast and lunch across the board, along with a 3-year plan for implementation to get up to the Healthy Kids Act of, actually in our case it'd be 245, not 246, by 13-14. So I would recommend that we increase meal prices next year and then take a year off and have no increase. 12, the nutrition standards that we're all striving to achieve. And you know, there's some great products from our manufacturers that are now available that weren't in the previous 2 years. We're not doing any capital improvement. This will be the first year since I've been here that we haven't had a big capital improvement investment. We put all of our capital improvement projects on hold or any non-essential expenditures until, again, the new reauthorization is implemented and we have a chance to look at, you know, all the costs that are going to be associated with that, and hopefully to maintain a positive fund balance in case of any kind of emergency situation that would require us to buy a new piece of equipment, you know, just spur of the moment, or any other unforeseen situation. So basically the budget plan, before we get into the numbers, is pretty much set at a break-even point. So here is the proposed budget plan for next year for 11-12. Just looking that our fund balance at the end of this year would be $481,720, and carrying that over as the beginning fund balance. And then we're going to get into the revenue and expenditures in a second, but again, they are almost mirroring each other because that's the way I have it set up currently. So take a look. So on the expenditure side, you know, the one thing that I would say is in the salaries and wages that that I really tried to look at is trying to maintain the positions that we currently have. I mean, obviously we'll look at any type of attrition that we get, and we'll, you know, reevaluate at that time if we need the position, if we need the same hours, and so on and so forth. So we'll really make those decisions one at a time when those occur. But what we tried to, the only thing that I really cut from salaries and wages was our sub-category of wages. We are basically going to try to, about 80% of the time, go without a sub. So, you know, either if I would go out to a location and help out, or possibly Janet, my administrative assistant, or, you know, make a plan site by site of what that looks like when you're one person down and how we can make it through the day without covering that shift. So we made a slight adjustment there. Purchase services, you know, about the same. The food and supplies, again, we looked at the supply side, not the food side. We actually increased the amount that we're going to spend on food next year with the new requirements, with better food, with more whole grains by $30,000. So the food did not go down, but the supplies and certainly did. And then equipment, again, there's no capital improvement, so that's just a placeholder in the event, and frankly, it's a small placeholder in the event. Hopefully nothing big will break down, but in the event that something does, it's just a $10,000 placeholder in lieu of that. And then on the revenue side, you know, anytime you increase meal prices, you do see some adjustments in revenue, and so certainly we are planning for that as well. And furthermore, you know, like I said, we've already seen some adjustments with revenue based on our a la carte situation, so in planning for both of those, that's why the revenue piece is down. All right, just review here on some of the grant partnerships. We talked about Carleton and St. Olaf, so we don't need to talk about that again. But we're also working with the University of Minnesota on a breakfast grant here at the high school with Joel, who's been a great partner here. And again, what we're trying to do here at the high school is make sure that breakfast is accessible to the student body, that they know it's an option. They know they can take advantage of that option. So on March 14th, we actually got the go-ahead to try a breakfast cart kiosk. And since that, we've moved the kiosk one time. But a breakfast cart kiosk with more of a grab-and-go breakfast option, because we just weren't sure that everybody was even aware that we were serving breakfast. And again, wanted to try to make an impact here with the high school students where the breakfast is very, very low percentage of participation. The other thing that we are doing here at the high school is we're working on a video with actually a marketing company who partners with the University of Minnesota. And they are going to be doing an actual breakfast video here May 9th and 10th with our real students, and some of the high school students are going to be the lunch ladies. They're actors, so they're going to be acting like the lunch ladies. And so it should be really great. We're excited about that, and once that gets done, hopefully we can post that on our website, and so you can tune in and check it out. And again, we're using that video as a medium to just get the key messages about breakfast out to students, from students, so that maybe if it's very short and to the point, some of it will certainly register and sink in. You know, I was working out on Saturday, and I heard on the radio that another statistic that was frightening about students who don't eat breakfast are 400% more likely to be overweight. So I was just like, oh my goodness. So that's a frightening statistic. Again, we talked about the Midwest Dairy Grant. We also are doing a SHIP grant, very small. A mini SHIP grant is really what it is, with Rice County, to really help us launch a healthy after-school snack option at the middle school. We started that in January, and we're still doing it, and we're working out the tweaks. You know, we've had, again, with anything new, you have to look at it and try to figure out, you know, the best system for everybody, the best system for us and the students that we're trying to serve. But it is our intention to also do that next year. And just on that line, one of the things that the grant did help us do is we're doing some branding of just signage, and again, to really try to focus on some positive nutritional messaging around healthy snack choices. So Energy Express, if you go to the middle school, you'll see these signs. We'd like to use this branding also at the high school. We haven't done that yet, so, but they did a nice job, and it was all funded through the SHIP grant. Just some program goals for next year: to utilize and expand our website, just to offer more pertinent information, and that's easy to locate. You know, it's great to have information on your website, but if it's buried and nobody can find it, it's really not that great. So we're excited about trying to create, you know, more pertinent information that's easy to find. Again, we're interested in increasing our farm to school partnerships and our menu locations district-wide. You know, I can't tell you that's one great thing about, you know, a smaller community, and the word spreads and people have been calling. So I've had a lot of meetings about that and different opportunities on the menu next year, so it's exciting. We're trying to work collaboratively with the USDA. They're launching a whole new initiative called Chefs Move to School, with Michelle Obama, so you can go in and sign up, and we've been signed up for a long time, and we have not been partnered with anyone. So if there's any chefs out there who are watching this, you need to call me right away. So the whole idea is that, you know, it doesn't have to be a huge amount of time, but we would bring in folks who are actually executive chefs by trade, and actually place them in our kitchens, working with our kitchen managers, look over all the products we have in inventory, and then create recipes to test out with the kids. And there certainly is a process and a criteria for doing this, but we actually tested this in March because Cece Green over at Greenville Park actually is an executive chef, so we're lucky to have Cece here on board with us. And she created a recipe that we actually did menu for Southwest, spicy Southwest chicken. And we went through the same process. We tested it out with the kids. We had them fill out forms to see if they liked it, didn't like it, and then we menued it at all of our schools. So it met all the new nutrition criteria. It met all the costing criteria. So we are very excited about this program, and hopefully we'll be partnered up with, you know, either one or two chefs and be able to really create some great new items to serve at all the schools. We're working on launching fruit and vegetable bars at each school. So really trying to, again, use some of our serving equipment to highlight and just market more fresh fruit and vegetable choices. We all know, we all eat with our eyes, and we all kind of want to see all of our choices all in one place at the same time. So we're going to try to also do that next year at all our schools. And then maybe looking into some special events where maybe, just as an example, one day during homecoming week, the football team would serve lunch and the child nutrition staff would wear, football jerseys and just, create some per site media and just add some fun into the day. So anyways, that is it. I don't know, does anybody have any questions?
Well, thank you, Pam. That was a good report. Anybody have any questions for Pam? Ellen?
So first of all, thank you. I think those ideas on the healthy snacks during the day and the after-school snacks and the breakfast, I think that's great. I was curious in terms of participation, if some of the issues might be logistical instead of food choices, in terms of wait lines. I've got a middle schooler who I'm making lunches for again so I'm wondering if that's something that you're looking at too, if there's ways to encourage participation.
Yep. No, I think that's a really good point because there's always a lot of different variables in how we frame up our menu mix choices at the middle school and the high school can just cause complete chaos. One of the things that we really are striving to do when we look at especially the high school and the middle school is the highest popular menu days, by participation and by counts, to actually run the same line, to run both of our hot food lines, because normally we have two completely different choices, which is great, except for the fact, like you said, if it doesn't work out and if you haven't planned correctly or guessed correctly, you can just wreak havoc. And so it can, I think it's probably more of a problem at the middle school than at the high school. I'm not exactly sure why, but their participation overall for their student body is higher, so they have more kids who are eating mainline lunch. But yeah, we definitely get into that problem, and we're always looking. That's one of the things that I like to do when I go out to the schools is see how long it takes the last person in line on any given lunch period to get out the cashier, to be checking out, and then how much time they have to consume their lunch. Because that is something that we just need to get better at. The elementary schools, I think, the principals have been great about, and the teachers, about really sticking to the lunch schedule and understanding that 1 or 2 minutes is a big difference for us and can wreak havoc on the schedule. So I don't think it's as much of a concern there. But at the middle school and the high school, we're always trying to work through that.
Anybody else? Julie?
I had a quick question. First of all, thank you for all the great changes you've made and for your staff who are so dedicated and work so hard. That is a tough job to be a food service child nutritionist at any of our schools. I just could not recall when the last time we had an increase on our meal costs.
The last time was my first official year here was 09-10.
Okay.
I was actually here in March, but.
So we've been able to keep a steady fee for a couple of years, which is good.
Okay, John?
Earlier, I was really proud of myself because I was able to solve all the third-grade math problems I saw on the screen. But you had a word problem that I couldn't quite work out, and it's the cost of the lunch. That somehow it needs to work out to $2.46, and there's $2.72 and 26 cents, but I'm not clear that I understand what those numbers represent or why we need to charge that much. So could you maybe just slow that down a little bit for me?
Yep. The $2.72 is the amount of money that we receive from the federal government anytime we serve a free school lunch. So that's the amount of reimbursement we receive for serving free school lunch. The 26 cents is what we receive for serving a full pay school lunch. And so when you minus the 20, and this was part of the reauthorization, the Healthy School Kids Act, that was written right into law by President Obama. And basically the U.S. government, and there's tons of blog sites on it and so on and so forth, but really is trying to not subsidize school meals for students who are normal paying. And that's what the perception is now, that that's what they are doing. So.
Okay, so the price of the lunch has been set in Washington now, is that?
Correct.
Set by the same people having $17 billion in debt.
And so the idea,
Trillion.
At what point, I mean, by the time we get to $2.46 from $2, it could have gone up even more. Is that likely? I mean,
no, that's not likely.
not likely. They would hold it at that for some time frame.
Correct.
Thank you.
That's not
Did you say, Pam, that when you said they were going to authorize an additional 6 cents per lunch, that was the first time in 30 years they had upped their reimbursement rate?
correct?
Okay, so maybe the $2.72 and the 26 cents will hold for another 30 years.
It's been the same for a very long time.
Okay.
So.
Okay, and can I just confirm? I was looking at the on the expenditure page, and I think my notes are right here, but the proposed 11-12 expenditure for food and supplies is down significantly from the 10-11, but what you're saying is that the actual expenditures for food are going up about 30,000,
Correct.
but it's supplies that
Going down.
are going down. Okay. Good. Anybody else, any questions?
The other thing I did forget to mention on the expenditure side, but it was part of the budget meetings, but we're taking on more basically chargebacks for, equipment repairs and so that's included in here as well.
Okay.
On the supply side.
Okay, Julie?
So that was one of my questions, because I recall that, in the budget process, we were charging back that. So what line does that hit in the expenditure? You're saying food and supplies
Correct.
is where that hits? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just to clarify one thing, Pam, my understanding would be if we operate under the typical federal guidelines, if we did not look at moving up to charging the $2.46 per meal by the time that they framed it, my sense would be the things that would get triggered would be they would quit giving us the reimbursements on the free and reduced price meals.
Correct. You have to.
So that's always the hammer of you must bring this up, because otherwise your free and reduced price meals that you currently are getting significant reimbursements on and are required by law to be provided if you provide a hot lunch and breakfast program, those dollars would go away. And so as we're seeing more and more kids that are opting for free and reduced price lunch meals, that would eliminate all of the funding for those meals. So we don't really have a choice of moving there, and I think the only thing, as Pam has shared with you tonight, is it's coming over a 3-year period to move us to that 246 so that people can work through that increased cost.
Okay, that's correct.
Good. Anybody else? Anything? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, on to more budgets. We have the proposed 11-12 non-operating fund budgets. Stephanie Schaubach, our Director of Business Affairs. Report on those.
I have just a brief presentation tonight to provide you with some summary information regarding our account types that are non-operating, fiduciary, and proprietary in nature. We'll begin with our non-operating fund. We currently only have one active non-operating fund. The other commonly used non-operating fund is our construction fund. However, this year, in the 10-11 fiscal year, we are finalizing any remaining expenditures occurring out of that fund. So we will not be proposing a budget for that non-operating fund going into next year. So as we look at the debt service fund, this obviously is used to record the revenues and expenditures for our outstanding indebtedness as a district.
And really, there's two types of ways that a district can respond or address the debt burden issued by the district. One is through a direct tax assessed to the properties within the district, and this, of course, requires voter approval. The majority of our debt we currently have outstanding is of this nature that has been approved by the voters in previous referendums that we have passed, or that the voters have passed, rather. Second method of addressing the debt burden is through an offset in a formula-driven revenue, which is operating capital in nature. And so while we will levy a debt service levy to capture that money, we'll have an equal and offsetting reduction in the operating capital. And so it's really not an increase to the property taxes levied against the property tax owners of the district. As we look at this slide, this is probably difficult to see within your handouts. I apologize for that. But really, this is the picture of all of our outstanding debt as a district. And I've highlighted just a couple areas, a couple issuances on here. The top row, our 7/1/2001 debt issue, which was in the amount of $30 million. That was to go towards the construction of the middle school, renovations of the high school, and Memorial Field. Last year, at the beginning of the year, in working with the financial advisors that work with the district, they had recognized that there was an opportunity to refund this debt and refinance it to get a more favorable interest rate. So we did go forward as a district and refund that, and we did it as an advance refunding. So that will be paid off August of this year. And what happened when we refunded that, we sold new bond issues, which go into escrow. And those have been held in an escrow account until this crossover date that we will hit in August of this year. The investments, or the escrow account, is set and invested in securities that will gain enough interest so that it can make the debt payments until we hit that crossover date. But the result of that going forward is approximately $200,000 to $220,000 decrease in our property tax levy that we need going forward to pay off this debt. So it's more advantageous for our property taxpayers to move forward with those reduced interest rates. You'll see on the third row down we have the 2003 issue of $13.9 million. That was the same situation when we moved forward and refunded a previous issue from 1996. And the second category of methodology to address outstanding debt that I referred to as an offset to operating capital revenue that doesn't have an increase on the property taxes have an asterisk by them. We have two in that category. It's the issue that was for $1.4 million issued on February 1st of 2004, and then two rows down for $2.1 million issued on July 5th. And really what those have gone towards is deferred maintenance. It allows our facilities department to move forward with large projects that our normal operating capital couldn't fund all in 1 year. So the last three columns are really what generate the expenditures in this fund. The principal payments, which we make once a year, and the interest payments 2 times a year for the total expenditures in the last column, the last column there. So just to give you the revenue summary, again, the bulk of the revenue coming in is through the local property taxes, and again, the majority of our taxes that are levied to pay back these bonds have been voter approved previously. We get a small amount of interest on the investments, which has obviously gone down over the last few years. But we do have an offset to our property tax levies through state credits that we actually get through the state, which further reduces the property tax. The corresponding expenditures are really defined by that levy that we set. It's those principal and interest payments that are defined at the time that we issue the debt. So there's very little variability or lack of, it's very predictable in this account category. But again, this represents what the bond principal payments proposed for 11-12 will be, along with the bond interest, small amount of debt service fee that we incur working with our financial advisor. In this expenditure category, and actually I should toggle back to the revenue category, you'll see in the 9-10, actually the fiscal year 9-10, we had the refunding take place, and we had that large stream of revenue of $23.8 million come in. That is the amount that came in, and that has been placed in escrow. It's remained there, gaining interest, paying the debt payment on the new issues until we get to this August date next year. So this $23.8 million on the revenue side, you'll see coming back out in 11-12 when we hit that crossover date. All that old debt will be paid off, and we'll be moving forward paying on the new debt at the lower interest rate. So those kind of correspond with one another. It's those two lines we looked at on the first debt schedule. So just to give you a picture of the fund summary, just showing our beginning fund balance, and we go all the way back to the actual financial data from 9-10 with that beginning fund balance of $1.2 million. And with the refunding that year, our fund balance at the end of the year went up to $24.9 million. Again, the bulk of that being held in escrow. We carried that through the 10-11 fiscal year, and our proposed budget fund summary shows that coming back out, so our fund balance will drop back down to below $2 million as we pay off that old debt. Our next fund is our fiduciary fund, which is our trust fund used to record the revenues and expenditures that are to track trust agreements that have been gifted to the district through generous donations of community members, parents, etc. in the district. As these gifts come into the district and go into our trust fund, we set up individual accounts so that we can track each one separately from one another. We have our staff in the Northfield High School Guidance Office who manages and oversees our scholarship program, which is currently underway. And soon you'll be getting more information as the board more information will be coming to the board regarding the scholarship recipients moving into next year. But that is the bulk of the activity in this fund. It goes towards the scholarships. We have a couple that are non-scholarship accounts, and in incurring expenditures in those categories, we just monitor the expenditures that are being requested out of those accounts to ensure that they follow the intent the donor had when they gifted that money. And we usually ask for clarity if there's any ambiguity on how they want those dollars spent, and then we keep those records in our business office, and we'll track those expenditures. The proposed budget for the next year has a fairly consistent revenue and expenditure pattern as far as the scholarships that are offered. Sometimes there may be scholarships that are forfeited, and those types of things that are monitored, and those will roll over into the next year and will be able to be available to be gifted again to students if they apply. Our expenditures are slightly higher because, again, we have those non-scholarship funds that don't have an equivalent incoming revenue to offset the scholarships that are granted. So some of these items are one-time donations to the districts that will just be spent down over time. But this proposal has our ending fund balance at just over $100,000. Our last fund is a proprietary fund type. It's our internal service fund, which was set up in the 2005-06 financial year to track our self-insured dental plan. The revenue sources that come into this fund are really district, employer, and retiree premium payments. They're as if we're paying premiums to an external insurance company. In this case, being self-insured, we are that insurance company, and we take those dollars and we put them into this internal service fund so that they can be utilized to pay for claims through services that the employees in the dental plan incur, and administrative costs to administer the processing of those claims. And currently, Delta Dental is set up to help us administer those claims. We also work very closely with corporate health systems, and we have an insurance committee comprised of many representatives of the bargaining units, as well as our human resource department and business office, to really monitor and oversee, and we get routine reports on how this fund is operating. It's been very successful since it was set up back in 2005, 2006. The plan currently enrolls 436 employees, of which 153 have single coverage and pay $38.07 for their costs, or that is the premium cost, excuse me. And 282 of those employees carry family coverage at a cost of $112.21. And regardless of family or single coverage, there is an administrative cost for processing those claims, and that's $6.35. But again, because of the success of this self-insured dental plan, these rates have not increased for the last 5 years. So what we're proposing for next year, really two types of revenues. Again, the charges for services, which are essentially those premiums that we're paying ourselves to administer the claims or to pay for the claims. Reflecting a slight decrease because it has been so successful. We do have our fund balance rising, and with this type of fund account or this type of account group, you don't want the fund balance to get too high. You don't want it to get overly inflated. We're looking at ways that we can, as an insurance committee, that we may be able to change the plan design, change the service that employees are offered, and or decrease the costs. And as the insurance committee continues its work, we're also looking at what kind of impact we'll see for the health insurance. And those conversations are moving forward and will be finalized fairly soon as we approach our open enrollment period. But to offset those revenues, we are predicting expenditures of a decrease in the claims payments, but the administrative fees holding fairly steadily. And what we do is look at some trend analysis. Again, our consultant from Corporate Health Services helps us monitor those trends and averages and weighted averages. And so we're really taking a compilation of that information that we work through as the insurance committee to build these proposed budgets for next year. The fund summary then just pulls that all together. It predicts our beginning fund balance to be $363,000. Fairly balanced budget with expenditures just slightly higher than the revenues, but reflecting an ending fund balance of $350,000. And as promised, it was just a brief summary of these budget areas, but they are very predictable. So there's not a lot of variability, Bill. I'll be happy to answer any questions that any of you have.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. Anybody have any questions? No? I do appreciate your explanation of how the refunding works to save our taxpayers money on the interest payments. That we refund those, kind of like refinancing the house at a lower interest rate in order to save taxpayers money. So I do appreciate the clear explanation of that. Thank you. Okay, on to middle school principal Jeff Peshta is here to review the middle school program structure.
Well, good evening, Dr. Richardson and members of the school board. Tonight we'll be presenting, I guess, a more detailed look at some program and structural changes proposed for the middle school. And I want to kind of introduce the theme for tonight is basically many of the board members have worked with me on various district committees and see me at the board meetings and all kinds of different settings. And I want to kind of take a step back to not that person that works with you over here, but the person who works up on the hill back that way. And I kind of want to frame this from the viewpoint of, as I sit at some board meetings, you'll see an auditor come in and give you their recommendation, or sometimes we have our legal counsel give us a recommendation. So what I'm providing for you is a recommendation, basically using my head and 15 years of experience. This will be the 15th consecutive middle school of this size that I've scheduled. And before that, I taught in various junior high and middle school settings. And so I want to basically use that expertise to make a recommendation using my head and not my heart or my gut in coming up with these recommendations. I'd be happy at the end to tell you how I feel coming from those two other places, but right now This is basically, a consulting recommendation based on the current situation that we try to schedule in at the middle school. I want to add that this is basically a recommendation for what is the best match. Not necessarily my favorite, but the best match for our current situation, continuing our programming under a model of decreased staffing, and I'll share more about what decreased staffing, why that's already there, and what that could look like towards the future. We have a lot of new customized course options that weren't even offered 3 years ago, and I'll break those down for you because I'm trying to find the right term. I think customized is probably the best approach. Sometimes they're required by law. Sometimes they are things that we're doing, district initiatives that we've added over the years that are better for students, but they all require a unique approach to each student. And they're good things, but they put strains on the schedule, so we'll talk about that. And then, of course, the timing. Why present something like this at this time? And about 3 years ago, after kind of analyzing the middle school in operation for a year, there were some recommendations and suggestions that I had for models that actually I thought would benefit the overall programming. And a lot of the 6th grade teachers felt really strongly about continuing with the 3-person model. So kind of a compromise was made to continue with the three-teacher team model, but to meet the needs that were very obvious in the data that we saw and just my observations of the school for some of the unique needs for students. Well, I come back to it now, basically with all the timing, and 2 weeks ago we had some really awkward timing coming to a board meeting, talking about things that were possibilities that had just been wiped out 5 minutes before we presented them and things like that. So all these things kind of came together simultaneously in the last board meeting, and I had to be prepared for a lot of different contingencies. And in preparing for that, some people don't like sports analogies, but they're very simple. In baseball or softball, if there's a fly ball to the outfield and you're a runner at second base, the coach will tell you go halfway. So while we were waiting for April 11th, we were kind of sitting halfway. And then if the ball drops or lands safely for a hit, you really have a choice to go back to second base or go on to third base. It's the same distance either way. So as the ball fell safely on April 11th through all kinds of parallel pathways, and we ended up with just a small reduction needed to be made for next year, I kind of looked at it as, well, I'm halfway. Maybe this is the time, and I'll present the reasons why I believe it could be the time. So we want to take a look at what you have in the first slide here. Okay, we don't have a laser, but so we'll just kind of point to the areas. But what we're proposing now is a switch from a team model where there are 3 teachers for 3 teams in 6th grade. And that was reorganized 3 years ago to make sure that we had teachers teaching to their strength, that the personnel complemented each other, and that we met the specific needs of students. Now what I'm recommending to you is a 2-team model where there are 2 teachers, and if you look in the big rectangles, Team 1 and Team 2 that frame the top and bottom of the screen are basically identical teams. The only difference would be the personnel on the team. That's yet to be identified. A team, or the core of the team, which would consist of 5 periods out of a 7-period day. So you see, as far as the area that it takes up in the rectangle, it's approximately 5 class periods. And those would be periods that a student would see their core teachers and receive their core instruction. And there's a key coming later to break down some of the terms. We also would be adding keyboarding back into there. And there would be 4.6 FTE, or full-time teacher equivalencies, of staffing. So less than 5, because on each one of those teams, 0.4 of staffing would go from one team, would be the teacher who goes down in that circle in the middle and teaches the Amistades, or the Spanish classes. And from one of the other teams, 0.4 would go to a 7th grade reading interventions class. And so that's some efficiency that gets spread out across the schedule. So it's basically 5 people on each team. The Explore 6 block you see in each rectangle is 1 period of the day, and that is when students are leaving the team and they're going out and getting the reading strategies course for a semester, art for a semester, and opposite that all year long is their Phi-Ed class. And then the final period of the day is a music elective, and that is exactly the same. It works best for a 7th period. And so the students have a choice of 1 or more music classes, and they will complement it with the study hall. And so the difference here, the main difference is students would be split up onto two teams of about approximately 150 students. We end up starting off the summer with around 270 students, and by the time we open the doors, we have 300. Some of them they're part of the day, but most of them are full-time students, and that looks very consistent for the next 4 to 6 years that we'd have around 300 students in 6th grade. The circles in the middle represent the customized part of the school day, and what a student would do is they'd be a true member of a team. They would have their core team of teachers. There'd be one team on the first floor, one team on the second floor. Their lockers and things like that are right there in that area. For Explore or for music, they leave and venture down to those specialty areas of the building. But for the other things in the middle, as students have become increasingly customized in their course options, they will just go very close by to the room or the teacher that is there to specialize in whatever they're receiving. So if we work our way from the left to the right, special education, the staffing is not determined. We'll actually look at the individual education plans of the students coming into 6th grade, and it's a very short walk to those specialized classrooms. In some cases it's 10 feet, in some cases it's 100 feet, but students go to those classes, come right back to their team. We have math or reading acceleration, and once again, acceleration means moving faster than the regular curriculum. So whether you're in pre-algebra and you need to move faster, or you're actually going to underperform because you're not being challenged enough, or whether you come into a 6th grade below grade level in math, we have been working for 2 years now, taking a secondary math specialist and having them teach a half size or about a 15-student class for those students coming in that are just behind in their math performance. They're doing the same math curriculum, and they're ready to roll back in as soon as they catch up to a regular classroom. Obviously, if we're having classes of 15 students, you see some of the reasons why we tried to gain efficiencies in other areas to put them back into this customization. And then Amistades, we would actually have 3 sections, or 0.6 FTE. 0.2 of that comes from the ESL staffing in the farthest circle out to the right, because we do offer a class taught by one of our ESL teachers, and that's Mr. Alvarez, who teaches a diverse group of students, but includes all the ESL students who are actually reinforcing something that was kind of missed, which was true literacy in their home or their original language, depending on the case, so that they better develop their literacy in English. And we assign, of the ESL staffing to our building, 0.8 of it we would assign into the 6th grade support. And then another element in there, which has been the most effective tool in our progress in working with our ESL population, is co-teaching. And we learned as we experimented, we began experimenting with the push-in model of providing services in the classroom rather than pulling the students out. And we experimented with co-teaching. We found out that, much like all the things I'm going to present to you here today, the personnel match is critical. Co-teaching doesn't work any better, and sometimes works worse if you don't have the right personnel in place. And so one thing I learned, that no matter who you put into a co-teaching situation, if they're not used to working with ESL students and you put them in their classroom, they take ownership, they put their arms around those kids, and even though they wouldn't thought it was somebody else's issue at another time, they now are vested in the success of those students, but sometimes they're not always the most skilled to do that, and sometimes the co-teaching combination just doesn't work. In the past couple of years, we've developed some really model co-teaching situations. 7th grade science, many of the 6th grade classes, and another reason for trying to save FTE in one area is because obviously if you're putting 2 teachers in one classroom, you've got to find the resources to do that. I believe that clustering the ESL and the Amistades students together over the past 3 years, which we'll talk about more in a moment, was kind of a transition point to getting to where we wanted to, and that it was extremely necessary at the time. But now with the data and the observations that I've been able to accumulate over the last 3 years, co-teaching with those highly qualified and highly skilled teachers is really, I think, where we'll make the most difference, and the data is supporting that right now. And then at the bottom you just see, just kind of breaking down once again, it's a 7-period day with 5 periods of core instruction, and they leave for 1 period of Explore, 1 period of the music elective. And then as we had our parent meeting last week, we know that a lot of things in the previous slide, if you're not familiar with the terms, And of course, terms can change, educational jargon can get pretty thick sometimes. We just want to make sure that anybody looking at this would understand core, math, reading, writing, social studies, science and health are combined. And then in this basic model, keyboarding gets folded back into the core. Explore 6, we broke that down already in the music elective, and students basically have the choice of taking up to 2 music electives and a minimum of 1 in 6th grade. And they can have a study hall opposite that, and we're actually looking at taking some of the success that we had with our 7th grade systematic intervention of the Flex Study Hall, which again we're proposing for next year, which does pull more staffing than it should, but we believe it's well worth it, and the data is backing that up. We've always been able to do a lot of things with 6th grade, but people weren't doing it, and now that they've seen what the 7th grade can do, we can actually follow that model in 6th grade and have it be a flex type study hall where the students move, they take attendance where they're supposed to be with the teacher they're assigned, and then they can go get help from whatever person that is best suited to give them that help, which includes a History Day study hall. So there would be a time where students who are working on History Day projects can go with the teachers who specialize in leading that and get the support that they need, because we're finding that History Day is, you talk about different models. 2 weeks ago we were talking about different models for gifted and talented. Sometimes people don't look at History Day as a opportunity for the gifted and talented students to take it to whatever extreme they're interested in, or keep it basic depending on what's in their schedule. And then once again, it's really important to understand with Amistades, which is basically the Spanish instruction, is that 4 years ago when I arrived, it took a while to understand what exactly Amistades was in 6th grade, because it was trying to do a lot of things, and these are the words from the people who were teaching it, is we weren't doing a good job of any of them. And what you run into, and we'll talk about this later again, is you need another period in the day to do it exactly how you'd like to, or you need a true immersion model. And I was aware that there would be a curriculum review for the Compañeros and Amistades program, and so basically we did the best transition model that we could to improve that instruction, but wait till that final recommendation was done so that we could begin trying to match up with those students as they came our way. I'll talk about that more in the end, but basically what we switched over to was high quality Spanish instruction daily, teaching literacy in Spanish and not trying to teach some other core subject area in Spanish. And to do it every other day is what they were actually doing. So now if a parent chooses Amistades, and in this model, it just replaces their writing course. Most of the students who would choose to go on with that are probably writing at grade level or higher, and they are indeed writing in that class through their Spanish instruction. And so we believe that's the best trade-off that we can make. And of course, we talked about ESL students actually participating in it as well. Tier 2 interventions is a term that if our district has been working for a couple of years now with an RTI model or a pyramid, where the foundation of the pyramid is all the instruction that everybody has access to. The second level are students who are either falling behind or sometimes need to be challenged more, need something customized, and then the tier 1, the top of the pyramid, is as you work your way up, means that somebody needs a very customized schedule. Maybe they were missed and they do have a learning disability, or they need to be in an alternate educational setting like an ALC program or some other increased support, so they work up that pyramid. We did not have any Tier 2 intervention classes 3 years ago. We have found that the math intervention is highly successful, and that Read 180, when matched with the correct personnel, is extremely successful. And Read 180 is a double block course in order to retain the fidelity of the program. And when you put a double block course in a single block schedule, there's another strain that wasn't there before. We talked about math intervention and pre-algebra. And just for anybody that needs the background, ESL is students who are learning English as their second language. We do diagnostic testing, and students are determined, their eligibility is determined, so only eligible students are receiving that service, and it's on a graduating scale of 1 through 5, so that basically they work their way right out of the program when they're able to. Co-taught classes we talked about, and special education. So I figured the best way to take a look at, well, we'll back up here just a second to that. I'm going to go back to that model just to make sure to emphasize what is the efficiency in this model is that in essence we are offering every single thing that we did this past year for the students as far as customization, but the reorganization makes it more efficient. So the amount of total FTE dedicated to sixth grade programming is 13.6 FTE, whereas this year it costs 14.4 an FTE. So we'll get ahead to the next area and get my notes ready. And I'll be stopping at the end of the sixth grade one to take questions so that we don't go too far before we go on to something else. So I figured the best way to kind of present these two is to line them side by side and based on their strengths. Because I'm not here to criticize the three-team model. In fact, I'm the one who reorganized this model 3 years ago to meet our needs the best that we could. But I do want to emphasize the strengths and understand that it's just matching our current resources and our level of customization to where we move forward based on the strengths and not advocating for one program over another. If we look at the three-person teams on the left-hand column, with 3x3 teams, common prep periods are possible, and when I arrived, they weren't even using common preps, so I put that into place. So there were a lot of strengths in the 3x3 system that people weren't even using. So sometimes when something's about to disappear, they remember the fond memories of how we used to do that or we used to do that, but they weren't doing it. So we have been using common preps, and it's very possible with three-person teams in this setting. Teachers do see fewer students, and I've underlined teachers because we'll look at the mirror image of that in just a moment. So that is true, and that is a personal preference for a few of our teachers. I would say for sure one of our three teams would definitely like to continue on with that three-person model. It does provide reasonable scheduling possibilities for middle quartile students. So if you're average or a little above average, the schedule can work for you. I have a sixth grader coming into the middle school next year, my son, and he would probably do fine in a three-person model. But he wouldn't have a high level of customization, so he wouldn't be missing out on that. That wouldn't be creating too many challenges for him. But that leaves out a lot of students who it will create a challenge for. We go over and do a comparison, a similar comparison of the 2x5 person teams. Common prep periods would be possible for some teachers. So you couldn't have all 5 teachers. That would take away the strength of the system. But you can pair up the reading and writing teacher or the science and math teacher or whatever could be paired up to have their preps together so that they could do some time out their lessons and their planning daily. Students see a similar number of teachers to the three-person team model. The next slide shows that very graphically. So on one hand, the teachers see fewer students, and with the 2x5 teams, it's actually the students are seeing the same number of teachers per year or per day, whichever way you want to look at it. So it depends on whose lens you're looking through in that case. Most of our teachers will identify that this is probably necessary, whether it's their favorite or not. They understand what happens when we try to, and I probably would be a good time to point this out, is what we do is take 2 teams where we fit as many students as possible on those 3-person teams that don't need a high level of customization, and then the Amistadi students and the ESL students are placed onto one team, and that is not enough to balance out to equal 100 students. So I basically go through in the summer by hand all 300 schedules and find students on team B or C whose parent hasn't requested a specific team, who have no special customized needs, and who I could switch on to team A and somehow by hand make a schedule that will work for them. Because otherwise the whole, like I said, the three-legged stool is out of whack. And I've been doing that for 3 years now, and I can continue to do that, but it's certainly not the most helpful model in my recommendation. The scheduling possibilities on a 2x5 team provides possibilities for all students. All students will get the customized schedule that they need and retain their identity on one team. It maintains all the 6th grade programming for 8/10 or almost one less teacher, and it provides choice for the Amistadi students. Right now, their choice is, do you want Spanish instruction or don't you? If you choose to have it, then you're on that team and you deal with whatever other challenges are associated with that. A really big important point that I didn't put on there that I want to emphasize is when you look at the two-team model, I'll get the visual back here, those rectangles can become PLCs. And we talk about, well, they may not be able to all get together for a common planning time during the day. Well, many times they don't need to plan together. They just need to get ready for what they need to do. But to have an hour a day where they can all come together, Team 1 can meet with Team 1, Team 2 can meet with Team 2, or they can combine, or they can collaborate with other professionals. That really takes advantage of the PLC model that we have there. The other thing that's going on here is we have probability working in our favor. Why are all these strengths coming up on the 2x5 side? It's because we have probability working in our favor. Just like a number of phone number options, you wonder, it's like, how could we possibly have enough phone numbers to go around? Because we have 7 digits, or or whatever the case may be, depending on how far out you want to go. Adding an extra digit gives you unbelievable amount of combinations. It's also the reason why playing the lottery probably isn't going to work for you, because there's too many combinations. So we're basically taking the science of probability and putting it to work for us. When you think about 3x3, it's like going into a basketball game. Here's another sports analogy. And you're playing against a team that has 5 players and you've got 3. I could pass it to you, or I can pass it to you, but that's it. Or I spend a lot of time dribbling the ball, I guess. All right, so we talked about you may have the perspective that the students will see too many teachers if you go to a 2x5 model. There are a few outliers with highly specialized schedules, such as some special needs students with basically aren't in the mainstream for their full day. That would be outliers to this. Otherwise, this is the range for our students currently in a 3x3. Team A, which is the Amistades team, they see 8 to 10 teachers during their school year. Team B sees 7 to 9, Team C sees 7 to 9. In a 2x5 model, all the students on all the teams would see 7 to 10. So it's basically a wash when it comes to that. And once again, the point that is valid is the teachers will see fewer students. So now we can see we're coming down with continued list of strengths on the 2x5 person teams. This provides equal access to educational programs for special needs students and English language learners. In the 3-team model, students often had to make choices between a possible intervention that they might need. A common example was, do you want to read 180 because this is a great program and you really need it, or do you want to be able to take a music class? And the parents would be like, wow, what kind of choice is that? Of course we want to take the reading class, but wow, now we're missing out on music. Tough choice to be putting people into. Same is true for the English language learners. This model provides opportunity for all 6th grade teachers to develop their skills for working with students who have special needs. Talk about more about that in the next slide. If you don't have to work with students that have any special needs, and by special I mean anything that's customized, it's easy to tune that part out of a workshop or a training, or let that be somebody else's concern. I think as a school we're better when we all can do that. Better personnel options, and I should have highlighted the word personnel, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But teachers teach and team towards their strengths with the option of reduced preps. So they don't have to have reduced preps, but in this model, a teacher that could be a science teacher teaching 5 sections of science, or they could mix it up. The only thing that matters is that I need to have certain classes taught each period. As a 6th grade teacher, they're licensed to teach any of those subjects. What we want to do is basically in a PLC type model is once the teams are identified and we know which teachers, regardless of whether they're coming from an elementary school or whether they are already at the middle school, is that they can align with their team and start having the conversations during PLC time about, okay, what are our strengths? How we best align this to teach to our strengths, to our level of satisfaction. Some teachers would think it was heaven to teach 5 sections of the same class every day. And some teachers like me always got to the 4th or 5th class and saying, can I do something else now? Because I can't remember, did I already say that before? Or whatever the case may be. So they would have the option to really work to their strengths. And also, we need to take the personnel and match them the best that we can. When you're living in a 3-teacher team, it can get claustrophobic in there. And sometimes teams that work really well together, personnel, there could have been 10 different things that happened 2 weeks ago. And this was the base model that prepared for that. And it basically adds things back as the resources are there to add them back. And it can survive much leaner than it is right now. It can survive on 12 FTE if it ever got to that without changing the periods of the day. That would be an extreme. It would have the 6th grade teachers teaching all the subjects, which is legal. They're licensed to do that. Wouldn't be probably anybody's first choice, but who knows what's waiting around the corner for us. So like I said, this is the first time ever that I actually took a school and broke it down to what's the least number of FTE I can possibly get by without changing the entire structure of the school. Okay, this is kind of an important one here. Let me just make sure I didn't leave any notes behind on the previous ones.
I think you may want to back up one page, Jeff. I don't think you hit those.
Skip one? Oh, okay, we fast forwarded past it. Okay, so the 2x5 again provides equal access. We did cover that one.
Okay.
Yeah, we did cover that one.
All right,
So
good.
this one was not in your packet. This is one that I added because I wanted to show you a little bit of a graphic here. And I've titled this one Concentric Circles of Integration. And this is, I guess, a really important one that I want to emphasize. You look at the circle in the middle. When I arrived, our ESL staff did not have best practices in place. There were a lot of things staffing-wise that were holding us back. And if you want to talk about data, we won't go into it a lot right now, but we're aware that our ESL students and many of the other cells that those students fit into were not making adequate yearly progress. And so over time, we have worked on best practice strategies with our ESL staff. We have outstanding ESL staff, staff that are viewed now, in some cases around the state, as leaders in ESL education. And that was the most important thing. That was the center of the bullseye. That had to be taken care of. And part of going with one team dedicated to having the ESL students clustered was it was really hard to find the services to line the students to get to the services that they need because they were so restrictive in their options by being out on different teams. So we had to cluster them just to make sure that we provided the services that we needed to, and we had to focus on what's the best program for us to have. And once now that's been established, the ESL staff has moved out to the acronym Team Up. There is for a program that our ESL staff and some core teachers at Northfield Middle School participate in. We're one of 5 teams that are working with the University of Minnesota and are funded by a grant to basically go out and radiate the best practices, not only within their building but around the state for ESL instruction. And the co-teachers are also part of that next wave. Once you put students in a classroom with somebody, especially if you put them with a skilled ESL teacher, they not only care about those students, but they become very effective and they begin to adopt those same best practices. The next layer out, Team Nano is actually an extension of Team Up, where they're doing a book study and monthly meetings with other teachers who were not a part of the Team Up grant but wanted to learn best practices. They've also been doing workshops for our staff on professional days, and there are some staff who are very motivated to participate and to learn and to include themselves in this circle of integration. However, we've kind of reached a point in our momentum where we either need to keep going or you could risk kind of stalling out. We need to get this out to the next level, which I believe is the entire 6th grade staff. We'll worry about the entire building, is another level out. But right now, the entire 6th grade staff needs to participate. I could, not in this setting, but I could share some stories of staff interaction with students and student interaction with other students that would basically make your jaw drop. That sometimes we think we're a lot further than we are, and we're not. And that's, I guess, I'm going dangerously close to getting heart or gut into this one. But basically, we need to give these students that were on Team A equal access to the educational programming. Once again, I'm pretending to be a consultant here, but if I was a consultant on the legality of segregating the students onto one team when even the principal doesn't believe that there's no longer a reason to do that, that's something to seriously be considered, and I'm not doing my job if I don't bring that forward to you. It can sometimes be other special needs students that are also in a similar situation, but for example, special education has been around a long time, and some of the bugs are worked out, and it's a little bit more familiar to people. has been around such a long time, but some of the same examples take place there. And it was happening in 6th grade too, because people were becoming very specialized. And we, of course, had the role of parent requests factoring into that as well. So the radiating effect, we'll go back one more. The radiating effect stops when some staff members don't work with many categories of special needs students. They don't see that they need to put the effort into becoming part of the next concentric circle. The special needs categories are the cells at the middle school that are currently, there were still 2 left this year that were not making AYP. And also even more troubling than not making AYP is our ESL students perform below the state average for ESL students. And there are some really unique factors to Northfield behind that. The people that we're including in these circles have done a lot of questioning and digging to find out what are those factors and how can we overcome them. It's also the topic of my doctoral dissertation, that I want to find out exactly what are the stories and what are the unique things to Northfield, because I believe it's very unique that we would be behind the state average. The AYP thing is a whole other thing. There's plenty of company there. But that's not a common place for Northfield to be behind the state average in anything. The current model does not provide equal access for all students. I just have to make sure that I emphasize that. A circle in this case should be the entire 6th grade faculty. And if you look at these slides and you line them up against the district mission statement, you'll see some conflict with the old model that hopefully is corrected in the proposed 2x5 model. So we still have a few more that are coming up on the 2x5 side. This provides a stable window of opportunity to strategic plan a Spanish immersion program to meet the class of 2021. So when we went back with our first graders and said, all right, we've been doing compañeros for a long time, but it's become all kinds of different things over time. Let's refocus it and decide, are we going to put our resources into it? Because it does take more resources. So we've done that, and we recognize that at some point, that class is going to be coming into 6th grade, and they're going to be expecting this true immersion program that the renaissance of compañeros has been providing them. We need to make sure we had Spanish instruction of high quality first. We need to make sure we're taking care of all the other things that we need to with all the demands on us. Having this basic framework that's expandable to whatever situation we're in gives us a stable window so we can actually now strategically, we could take 3 years to design the plan for that class of 2021 when they arrive in 6th grade and do it right. And the time to start would probably be right now before somebody says, well, you only got a year left to do that. Now would be the time to start strategically getting the stakeholders involved in doing that. This model also has the potential to reduce scheduler time by applying scheduling software. We get a little bit technical, but there is software that helps people schedule. And a little bit later we'll talk about some of the roadblocks in scheduling. Our scheduling software can do very little with the 6th grade. It can mass add students, it saves some time, but that's about it. Under the 3x3 model, I basically have to go through every schedule by hand and find the right students to put in there. Yeah, I can do that. I've got the time to do it. I'm getting paid to do it, so I guess if I can continue to do that if I need to, but it really isn't an efficient way to schedule things. We'll talk about more when we get to looking at 7th and 8th grade, why that's such an issue. The 2x5 team, we talked about this 2 weeks ago, is sometimes you need a change, even if it's not the change isn't a healthy thing like a budget cut, to kind of stir some things loose, and this is a personnel thing. We have the potential for flexible blocks that can be utilized for interdisciplinary projects, enhanced advisory program, and a staggered lunch recess schedule. So we address giving the best possible lunch experience to the 6th grade students and adding even more physical activity to their day. Take some creativity, and if you don't change something, people get locked into saying there's no way we can do that. We've gone through looking at 4-period lunch, and it's really the 6th grade that's most interested in that, so we could actually work with the 6th grade and add some things that basically, at some point the middle school was staffed with personnel, and you inherit that personnel, and you've got to find a model that will work for most of the personnel. Unless you're going to be given the opportunity to start over, you better find a model that works with the majority of the personnel that you have. You're always working on getting the highest quality teachers that you can, but sometimes decisions are made on the personnel that you have there. We obviously won't go into specific examples, but I have to let you know that that's part of coming up with this plan and why I think this may help add some of the middle level elements that are missing and have been kind of blocked at the middle school and to work those back into place. This model provides maximum student and parent choice. There's no doubt about that. And it does provide a true team identity for all students. Right now, there are a handful of students, I think the term we kind of use at the middle school is the lost students, that are kind of wandering around between teams. They have a team that they're supposed to be a part of, but they end up taking classes from different teachers in different areas. And they even have to try to sit down and figure out, okay, now which field trip am I supposed to go on, because I'm not sure which team I'm in. Because we're choosing to, and I think rightfully so, give them that customized education that they need, but we don't have a perfect three-way balance going on there. So before we go to ACE, it brings us to questions about 6th grade, because I think the other elements here, thankfully, are going to be pretty quick, and I think if we go down that path, we might skip, lose track of the questions that you have, so maybe we'll do that and take the other small parts here after that.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. It's very, very helpful to have that side-by-side comparison of the 3x3 and the 2x5. So questions with respect to the 6th grade program for Jeff? Ellen?
So I had questions about connections and then the integration. So in terms of the teaching staff having more students, one of the concerns might be that the students, these lost students, that students, if teachers don't know the students, and this is really a critical age for them to feel connected to the school. And I know at the high school they have some really intentional ways that the teachers kind of look at all the students in the student body and make sure that they're known. And so that would be one concern with the larger teams, is that how we could make sure that wouldn't happen. And then in terms of the integration, does that, just a clarifying point, does that mean that the Amistades and the English language learners will be on both teams? So that they'll be really mixed in the classroom? And
Basically what we would do is we do take parent requests before the schedules are done, because it's easy to front load them. And once we post who the teachers are on each team, we allow parents to make a written request based on educational reasons, learning style, whatever, to be on one team or the other. And then all other students would be loaded equally between the two teams, and they have equal access to anything else that they need. And because of the probability of those combinations, they can fold right back onto their team for everything else. Some students may leave for one class, they may need to leave for 3 classes, but the rest of their day goes back with their team. They also have the opportunity in the Explore block in this model, because it's no longer tied to a team, they'll be able to have Phi-Ed or art or whatever with students from the other team. And sometimes, a parent requests, you'll be on this team. It's like, great, the same kids I've been with for 5 years now. And part of middle school is being exposed to the other kids. They get that team identity, but maybe their best friend or their neighbor is on the other team. They never see them all day. And hey, now I have a chance to at least have a class with them, whatever the case may be. And we talk about inclusion. I will tell you, I've been a member of the National Middle School Association and the Minnesota Middle School Association for, I think, 16 years now. I think the only other person at the middle school who belongs to that organization is the Media Center director back here, and participates in conferences and presents and things like that. So there are a lot of middle school elements that have been missing for quite a while, despite the sign out on the highway. There are many middle-level elements that are a part of the program, and there are things that I would like to add, and I think kind of breaking the stalemate on some of these things through personnel, through the organization, provides a chance for us to blend them back in. Students would still have a base teacher, and it'd be a true base teacher because they'd really go on field trips or whatever with that team. It'd be obvious. They'll see that person again at the end of the day for study hall if they have one. And they have the opportunity now to, if there's a team that wants to work more with the responsive classroom. Basically, in this model and in the other model, there were time for flexible blocks. Because you have a 7-period day and the bell rings, people get in the habit of learning stops, you must move to another place, and they never had to do that, and they wouldn't have to do that in this model too. And getting a more diverse group on a team, I think, kind of breaks free the creative thinking process, and people will be able to see that we can do that and find ways to have interdisciplinary learning that would connect people together in different ways. So I really see a lot of the middle-level philosophy elements coming back in. I know that's a strong preference of mine, and that's my background. But you have to understand that, well, there's some resource things that we'll look at the end here. And I think it's also, I'll save that one to the end, though. But there are some really elements, I think, that they're coming in at the end that can answer that. And if I don't answer it completely with that part, we'll come back to that. I hate to just repeat that at the end again for you.
Okay, Ann?
I have two curricular questions, just for clarification. For, on the next slide from that, the sixth grade key slide, when I'm reading this, it makes me see that a student through this elective system might not have any music. It's possible, correct?
No, the only students that wouldn't have have any music class are those students who had such a highly customized schedule that, like an IEP manager and the parents, the whole IEP team was basically saying it's more important that they have this specialized instruction. Otherwise, students who don't choose band, choir, or orchestra do have general music for a semester. And we had it for a year, 2 years ago, and the music teachers themselves actually said, we're really stretching that out. It's a semester course. And what we implemented last year was a sixth grade study skills class. There's something that the sixth grade teachers have been talking about for years. It's like, there are some really specific skills that set students off on their way to success. How to do a library search, how to cite resources, how to, all kinds of topics. And particularly some of the students who don't choose band, choir, orchestra typically end up being students who kind of struggle with organization and things like that. And so we added that class as a complement to that. And it's worked really well, and I think the sixth grade teachers wish that everybody actually had that class, but there just aren't enough periods in the day.
Right. So they have to take one semester of music
Yes.
sometimes. So that sixth grade study skills, that's what confused me, is that that was under the whole.
Second, so there's first
Yes,
one semester is general music, the other
Yeah.
semester's sixth
Okay.
grade studies.
It looks way busier than it is.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple, but it does
band.
Yeah.
does fill the
Choir
frame
or-
up pretty
Or
well.
they're up in band or
Right.
choir orchestra. Okay, good. I just want to make sure about that.
And I just wanted to
Confused me.
follow up on something I was thinking about before. The 3x3 model is actually a pretty good fifth grade model. It's a good transition from fourth to sixth. It's really limiting for what we offer. And, and this is a compliment, but Northfield offers an incredible array of options. I was just spending some time over the weekend reviewing District 191, 194, and 196's offerings for their middle school. 196, for example, is going down to a 6-period day instead of 7-period. You can begin taking Spanish in 7th grade. It's the only language offered through middle school. We offer 3 languages and begin Spanish in 6th grade. You can take one music option, or a dance if you don't want music, a dance type class. So basically what we're doing is the state requirement for arts standards is offered and accomplished already in 6th grade before we even get to the 7th and 8th grade. Frees up more electives for the students to specialize in what's of most interest to them, because we've already met the standards for what we need to offer for arts by the state.
Okay, and then the other question I had is on the next one under the Amistades Spanish Literature or Literacy Daily for students learning Spanish as a second language. And then you put in parentheses, replaces writing. Can you just explain that to me a little bit?
So in the core, there are 5 classes that the students need to take in that big part of the rectangle: reading, writing, social studies, math, and science. And then the other 2 blocks, the other 2 periods are taken. So if they're going to come out to that middle area for Amistades, they're going to have to give up something. When we tried to do combining the 2 classes together or alternating every day, we weren't doing a good job of anything. So they basically won't have a writing class. They'll still have reading, and writing is reinforced in all their core subjects. I mean, that's kind of the key element is,
Writing.
it's not just the writing teacher's job. One of the strengths of a 6th grade licensure is these people are either have been teaching writing, currently, or it's somewhere in their background where they've been teaching writing, and they can reinforce that. They do a lot of big projects where writing is emphasized throughout the curriculum. But a choice has to be made. Like I said, we could really use an 8-period day. That would make things a lot better. But with a 7-period day, they have to make a choice, and writing is the natural thing for them to substitute. That's a choice that they're making there. Same is true for if they take Read 180. Because it's a double block, it replaces reading and writing. But it's an intensive, accelerated course for reading and writing that puts them basically able to keep up whenever they graduate out of it. And that can happen after 6 weeks. That can happen at the end of the year. Whenever the students are ready, they monitor their progress daily, and they're ready to go back in and have a regular reading and writing class.
Thank you.
Okay.
Much clearer now.
All right.
Anybody else? Any questions? Julie?
First of all, I want to thank you for this because this really does detail very well the changes. And I really do like the 2-by-5 person team model. It's interesting because when the Sibley third graders presented, they talked about how, it's very intentional with the flexible learning groups that we are mixing the compañeros students with the other students. So this I really like that part of it. And I wanted to understand how the sixth grade study hall model would be similar to what you have accomplished in seventh grade this year.
It's always been set up, what seventh grade went through a lot of effort through a systematic intervention task force to come up with, because the seventh graders spread out everywhere and the study halls are all different periods. The sixth grade study hall was always seventh period because it's what enables us to have the multiple music choices. And so they've always had that available to them. And like I said, sometimes you need to shake things up a little bit just to get people to pay attention to, wow, we can do this. And I wouldn't say that they don't move kids around. I mean, I think that they will if somebody says, I need help with my math. I need to see somebody that can help with the math. I mean, they do move kids around, but this would be more of an intentional saying, what's working in seventh grade, we'd also do in sixth grade, because seventh grade took a lot of effort to create that alignment. Sixth grade, it's already there. It's almost be like, it'd be foolish not to do that. And as far as the connections, I know there are a lot of examples of questions that all those school districts I was talking about before, at a minimum, the teachers are working with 150 students, and they're seen as some of the top school districts for middle-level programming around not only the state but the country. And I know that puts a little bit extra burden on teachers, but there are 900 students in the school, and I feel like I'm making a connection with all of them. It takes a lot of effort to do that. I wish I could remember everybody's name right off the top of my head when I see them, but they all know me, and I've interacted with them, with chit-chat, whatever, at numerous times during their stay at the middle school. So I don't expect the staff to do anything that I can't, or that I won't do myself, and I do know what extra effort it does take to make that connection, but it can be done, and I've taught in that model, and I've worked in schools, and I put similar schedules together. Actually, the schedule that I proposed 3 years ago was not even the same model. It was a 2-team model, but it was a different model where you rotate the specialists. But anyway, another place that I put that into place 10 years ago, people were kind of shocked that this is different and we don't know what to do with it. They're still using it today, 10 years later. So.
Okay. Any other sixth grade related questions? No?
Okay, we're going to move on.
Here we
And
go.
other than questions, these will be quicker, but we'll certainly answer any questions that you have. So there were, I was asked to come and present a little information about the change in ACE. And ACE is Art, Communication, and English. It's basically 3 topics put together as one team talk class. And so once again, I thought the simplest way to line it up is a side-by-side comparison of the strengths. First of all, the ACE model has been around a long time, and the teachers are great. There's no doubt that the teachers who have been teaching ACE are great teachers. They've done an excellent job, really been passionate about this model. It is their preference, and I've basically been meeting with them for 4 years now, talking to them about what they think the strengths are, because it does cause some difficulties in the schedule, and it does take extra resources, and I've been asking to help them, or for them to help communicate that to other people so that people can understand why we do that. It is a team model, and I firmly believe in a team model. The issue with the team model is they're the only ones teaming. And my first year, at the end of my first year here, we actually surveyed the 8th grade staff. How open would you be to teaming the entire 8th grade, because that's the way it would work? And basically, no interest whatsoever. And it becomes a real challenge. How good is a teaming model if you're forcing people into it, as opposed to taking the time to kind of find ways to reinforce why that's valuable? But you have to pick and choose where you're going to put your energy, and getting the entire 8th grade on board was not going to happen. So we continued with the ACE model for the past 4 years, as well as many years before. And it had uniformity. Everybody knew that, every student took it. It was pre-scheduled for them. It took up 2 parts, 2 blocks of their day, and really guided the rest of their schedule. So we're looking at the strengths of splitting up art and English as individual courses. And once again, this was done or was proposed as a possible budget saving action. And once again, once it was apparent that we wouldn't have to cut as much, we were kind of in the choice where the registration happened at the end of the week after the district had its large group budget cutting meeting over at College City. And right away we had to have the registration materials together, not knowing what the scenario was. So the safety valve that I had in place was the registration documents have to go out because I can't make any changes once kids register to the offerings. However, I can add anything back that I need to. I can put the ACE model back in. I can do anything that we need to. After the fact, I just couldn't do it if I didn't change the registration document. So that seemed the safest way to go. And of course, while we're doing that, we're looking at what are the possibilities here. It eliminates scheduling obstacles. This is probably the greatest detriment to that ACE model, is having a team model built within a non-teaming structure. It matches all other 8th grade courses that are standalone then. Saves staffing costs by dispersing the students more consistently through the 8th grade course sections. One of the 3 ACE teachers is retiring at the end of the school year. I knew that before we started proposing this, and that's the opportunity. Somebody new was going to have to come on board if in a 3-person ACE team model, and that's not always the easiest task for a new teacher to come in and say, okay, well, you're replacing somebody who's been here 30 years, now you need to be that person. So it's an opportunity to try to look at that for possible change. Some more strengths of separating the classes. The 2 remaining ACE teachers that are going to continue on actually prefer offering 2 courses only. We offered to have all 3 subjects, art, English, and communication, as 3 standalone classes, and they both agreed it works better as 2. So that's their preference, so if they're the ones continuing on, it seems to make sense. We are keeping a communication class as a possible elective. If there are needs as we build the student schedule and we find that there's a need for another elective somewhere, that could be a course, but that would be basically the public speaking and the performance aspect of ACE. Otherwise, Ms. Angstrom wants to fold them all back into an 8th grade English class. ACE would no longer need to be preloaded into the master schedule, and it's like a big piece of furniture going in the living room, a great big multi-section couch or whatever. When you put it in, it dictates whatever else is happening in the room. Okay, ACE was great. ACE is great. We're not going to say anything else about that to cast any shadow of what they've been accomplishing there, but it is the big giant multi-sectional couch put into the room, and so we wouldn't have to do that anymore, and in an era of trying to increase the efficiency, that would help. It provides maximum student and parent choice, and you'll see how that does that later. We've greatly increased by 2 periods in 7th grade and by 1 period in 8th grade the amount of choice that parents have over the courses that they take. State art standards that would no longer be a required class in this model are still there in the class that's offered as an elective, and they can also be completed through 6th grade simply, and they also, art standards are the type of animal that can be accomplished, or it can be placed or housed in all kinds of different places. It works in FACS classes, it works in industrial tech classes, it works in English classes, it works all over the place. So, and we've already talked to the curriculum department about the possibilities of making sure that those are all covered. It seems like a very simple thing to do. It eliminates the necessity for a 0-hour Amistadi section. Some people probably aren't aware that at 7:20 every morning, a group of dedicated students shows up. A good portion of the year, it is pitch dark when they're looking out the window, and it's pitch dark when the class is over, and they wander back out to the commons area. All research would indicate that adolescents and late-stage adolescents, this is the opposite of what you want to do to them. You want them to come in later rather than come in before everybody else. But they're forced, and ACE wasn't doing this intentionally, but because that big couch was in there, they had to make choices, and some parents decided, we aren't going to make that choice. We're going to have the music, and we're going to have the language. And once again, there's no 8th period of the day, so they created one. So hats off to them, but it'd be nice not to do that to them. And unhooking ACE, that would not be necessary. So we'll go back here because that's the end of the ACE presentation, and we'll see if there are questions related to ACE before we get to a couple closing pieces. We would also add that one of the other challenges for ACE is St. Dominic students and any student who's on a part-time day, whether it's homeschool or any other issue, ACE wreaks havoc on their schedule too, because they're already limited to what time of the day they can come over, and then they've got these restrictions put on them by ACE. And once again, that is not, has anything to do with the ACE teachers doing that to them. It's just how it happens when you have a model that's sitting on the fence and isn't sure whether it's a team model or a standalone model.
Sure. Okay, thanks. Anybody, any questions particularly about the ACE program? Julie?
Well, I had one question. It actually goes for both. Will any of these changes do anything to class size, like overall average class size?
Yeah, and I won't tell you exactly what it is because I haven't scheduled the students at all, but based on scheduling logic, which is the issue that scheduling systems have, is they operate under scheduling logic, and these schedules have no logic. It's basically us trying to offer everything that we possibly can, which isn't a bad thing, but the computers don't understand that. So due to scheduling logic, all our course sizes, our average class size should go down across the board considerably because the kids are more evenly distributed. And right now, they're not. In fact, the computer basically kicks the schedules out and says, I don't know what to do with this. And then we, in the human brain, most of the time is still more powerful than the computer. We go in and we find ways to work that, or we switch students. It doesn't know how to go out and find another student to switch with it, and we do that. And that's a lot of work, and the scheduling software, ACE no longer needs to be preloaded, also means that the scheduling software can schedule most of the kids for us. We set up the framework, and then the scheduler puts the kids into classes, much like a high school does. And I can give you a little bit more insight into what it will do to the class numbers, or the average class sizes here at the end.
Anybody else? And thank you for that, not having to do that 0 hour on the studies. Some very painful years.
Well, I'm sorry I went through them, but the Spanish fluency is
Future
really good.
generations will benefit from that.
Okay, so ACE question.
So any other questions on ACE? We're good? Okay, on we go.
All right, I will do this quickly and see if there are any questions, but I was asked to present some information about physical education. And so that we have. Here is the proposed structure for physical education. There are some subtle changes, and I'll point out what those are by just basically walking through these. 6th grade, we looked at some creative ways to do Phi-Ed because 6th grade you can do creative ways if we were looking at the worst case budget scenario. Because we aren't looking at it anymore, everything's pretty much come back the way it is. 6th grade will still have an alternate day PE class as part of the Explore 6, that's all year. I've been squeezing in recess opportunities, taking kids out after lunch and things like that because our 6th graders cannot sit still all day. It's just physically impossible. When I do take them out for 5-6 minutes after lunch, they basically run around and go crazy. And then they're happy and they go back in and they learn. And it's amazing to watch it. I'm not kidding. They actually just run around and go crazy. So, but that's good. So we're looking at a way to actually get a recess. I don't know if it's middle school, they don't need a recess. The 6th graders do need a recess. And so we're looking at ways of getting that in. In fact, Phi-Ed has been, is part of kind of a comprehensive plan with Phi-Ed, health, food service, and Pam talked about some of those things before, just adding a kinetic element to the school day for our students, and then with PLCs, Fuel Up, and actually working with Pam on a Healthier U.S. School Challenge, where you look at the health of the students and who all should be a part of that and planning together as part of Phi-Ed, you do this, health, you do this, food service, you do this. And we won't go into all those things, but there's just a ton of stuff going on, and to work to have them be viewed at comprehensively is important. 7th grade, this is probably where the most significant change is. Rather than requiring all students to take Phi-Ed all year long, when we were looking at ways to reduce budget, we came up with a model. We actually considered making Phi-Ed elective for the entire year, but did some further research into what the requirements are, and we do have to actually have students take 7th grade unless a few different options are available out there. I'll show you in a slide quickly what they are. So the best way to keep that flexibility going is to require it as an alternate day class for 1 semester, and then it is an elective for the 2nd semester. Students also have electives that we've added, an elective that we've added in the past 2 years for more Phi-Ed. So it really comes down to students who are doing 12 hours of practice in a sport or something like that. They probably don't need more Phi-Ed. They just need the basic Phi Ed, but they can take it all year as an every other day class. Some students who aren't getting enough physical activity will have a choice to actually take it as an elective, and our lifetime sports class has just been really popular with the students. They just love it, and they wish they could take it all 3 grades, but we're restricting that obviously to the 7th and 8th grade because it fits into their schedule. And then 8th grade is daily PE, and we're actually going to, this year for the first time, co-teach Phi Ed and health because all students need to take it. Both of those classes are every other day. Those 2 teachers will teach it together, and they can be flexible. If the weather's bad, you can do 2 health days in a row. If the weather's great, you can do 2 Phi Ed days in a row, whatever the case may be. But the students will see the curriculum in the health matches what they're doing in Phi Ed, and those 2 teachers, it's the power of the co-teaching we have in the ESL model too, bringing the strengths of those 2 teachers to work collaboratively. So that would be an improvement, and of course 8th graders can take that elective as well. And we can't offer enough sections of that. The kids really are enjoying that. It's golf and bowling and a lot of those things that once you settle down, you start to take up as your activities, as opposed to only so many years you'll play tackle football before you probably move on to something a little less strenuous. Different age, happens at a different age for different people, but sooner or later, good habits need to extend beyond your early 20s. So what would happen if somebody wanted to take only 1 semester? They're all being encouraged to take 2 semesters. What if somebody wanted to only take 1 semester? What would happen if somebody wanted to actually opt out of Phi Ed in 7th grade? Well, we'd have to look at what the state requirements are. PE is mandated, but under local guidelines. Schools may substitute other activities for local standards, so we could do our own paperwork and say, if you're on the gymnastics team and you practice 12 hours a week, you can get out of Phi Ed. Here, we'll fill out a form, you put this in your CUME file. We have that option for any course, really, and we very rarely do it. Maybe once a year, twice a year, there's somebody who needs to, for whatever reason, really wants to opt out of a piece of the curriculum. But the state does provide a way to do that. And once again, these aren't what we're advocating for. We're just saying that if we ever got in a situation where people are saying, you're not requiring a full year of Phi Ed, why aren't you? Parents can request a waiver from Phi Ed if they want to for just about any reason that they put under health or personal. You can say, my student has bad knees. We don't want them doing Phi Ed. Well, it could be they have bad knees because they need to reduce weight a little bit, but the parent wins in those discussions. They just have to say it's for health reasons. There is no state Phi Ed curriculum. There is no state teacher-student ratio. Once again, 6th grade, we're working with a teacher-to-student ratio of around 21 students per teacher. The state would say that we can do 42 students per teacher, but I'd say not a good idea. The PE credits may be earned through online courses, and elementary licensed teachers may teach Phi Ed through 6th grade. So it's just background information. These aren't a part of advocating for anything. So any Phi Ed questions before we close out with the summation here?
Anybody? So what you're describing here, though, the program you laid out for the 6th, 7th, and 8th, those Phi Ed classes are going to be taught by Phi Ed teachers?
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, we have the same Phi Ed staffing as last year,
Yep.
now that I know what my staffing is available to me. And I would anticipate that the demand is actually more than that staffing can provide, because more students are going to want to take electives than we actually would have the teachers to provide. And that's fine, because it all balances out because they have a lot of other great elective choices.
Yeah, okay.
So in the end, making that little part elective really increases demand overall for Phi Ed, because the teachers are now teaching some choices rather than, we will all do, whatever the activity is for that day. We will all do basketball. Some kids don't care for basketball, okay? So, but they have to do the basketball unit or the floor hockey unit, or whatever, because that's what everybody's doing. Having elective options like a lifetime sports gives them a whole different set of things to do, where it doesn't feel like they're being pushed so much to have to do it. We have the greatest pool probably in the state, and any given day during the pool unit, you'll walk by and see 10 kids in their street clothes sitting on the bleachers. They're not going in the water. And there's a lot of reasons why they won't go in the water, and it's not a good idea to take them and toss them in the water. So, sometimes having choice.
Reinforce that we're not going to toss anybody in the water.
It's not a good idea. I said that. Did I say that? Okay, yeah. But anyway.
Out loud? No, I hope not.
So, basically, sometimes the kids react to Phi-Ed more favorably when they're picking it as elective than when they're being told this is what we will do. So, and Phi-Ed has come a long way over the years as far as giving students some choice and making it more appealing. So, any other Phi-Ed questions?
No?
Okay, we'll get to the closure here. So, 2 weeks ago we had to recommend what program reductions we might have, and there was more offered as possible program reductions to create the flexibility. Basically, I've had 2 weeks since April 11th to come up with the plan, knowing what we have to do. So now, what I'm actually proposing that we reduce is a 0.3 FTE reduction in middle school art. That's not a reduction in staffing because that staffing will actually be absorbed by the high request rates that came in for industrial technology and family and consumer science. So it stays within the building, but the art requests were down. And so we don't cut anybody's position, but we have 3/10 less art offered in the building, and so we have to compensate that by somebody traveling or some of the staff members picking that up somewhere else in the district. Also proposing a 0.2 FTE reduction in middle school business education. That is the keyboarding teacher. This is the first year that we've had a business teacher come over and teach keyboarding. In the past, we've had another staff member do it, or we've had the 6th grade teachers teach it within their school day. This is by far the best model. It would be a decrease in effectiveness if we went away from it, but in the reduction model, that gets me a 0.2 FTE, which is what I need to cut, so we can cut that. Our budget reduction committee actually suggested it as one of the simplest things to do. However, the 2x5 model and the other changes that were recommended here save enough staffing, basically save 0.8 FTE, that can be used to reinstate keyboarding, or to have to meet with those team teachers and say, much like we did this year where you rotated the students out to their 23 days of instruction by that high school business teacher, we could do that again if you're interested. It becomes the teacher's flexibility that's required, and so we'll see if they're interested in doing that just like they did this year. It's definitely the best model that we've ever had for addressing that, but the 23 days of instruction really doesn't fit into any other combination that we can do, so it ends up being rotating them out is the best. That still leaves me with an extra 0.6 FTE, which can be put into reducing class size anywhere that we need to in the building. Basically creates our own middle school contingency fund. And then, I guess I'll read this out loud. Because of the proposed structural and staffing model, that site contingency evaluation would appear. Over the 4 years that I've been here, the middle school has accessed the contingency model for a grand total of 0.1 FTE. And that's by being creative and using scheduling skill to pull off whatever it takes. Sometimes it takes 10 times more effort than it should, but it always gets done and the schedule is always ready. What we're proposing here is by being creative up front, we have a lot of extra creativity left over, and that could be put into co-teaching, splitting a section wherever a section is too high, anything like that. One thing that I think is important to close with is the proposed staffing, which I was notified of 2 weeks ago, is 42.4 FTE for next year, down from 42.6 this year. With that staffing, which is what I have, that's less than a typical junior high model. And I'll talk about that in just a second. Yet we are still able to, with these proposals, maintain most of the middle level elements that we have, and actually create the opportunity to add back some of the middle level elements that we've been missing forever. And we can do that for far less FTE than a true middle level program. A typical junior high of 900 students, if you were targeting 28 students per classroom as your average, would be staffed at 45 FTE. So we're well below even a junior high model. What I would propose to you, if you ask me, it will go to kind of the heart. What I think the best model is a pure middle level model, and that would take 52 FTE for a 900 student building with, if you're targeting 28 students per class, and I would actually advocate that 26 is ideal for middle level. But we're far away from that. So sometimes people are looking at this and thinking, well, why is this being pushed? And it's not being pushed. This is a recommendation based on the reality of what we have available for us. We've been making it happen with many elements of middle level for far less than even a junior high for a while. It was 5 or 6 years ago when you went down from about 50 FTE down to just under 43. And we've been, like I said 2 weeks ago, we've been doing all kinds of tricks and creative solutions to make this happen along the way. And if you look at the middle schools and some of those districts I talked to about before, they had to streamline the middle level elements a long time ago because none of those districts are able to come up with the 52 FTE or whatever that ratio would be for their schools to pull that off anymore. They know it's best practice and they can't afford to provide that, so they do the best they can with what they have. And that's exactly what I proposed here is my recommendation for the best that we can do with what we have. And then I just wanted to give a little reflection back on the middle school, the toolkit of the items that were supported that we said to our budget reduction committee. We will take these into consideration. And I realize now as it's up there, the red or maroon lettering doesn't show up really well, but the maroon ones are actually the ones that actually did play a factor in all this proposal that I gave you. So it was taking all that information and input from our committee and putting it to work. The black ones are things that aren't going to take place, such as setting a hard minimum for first-year world language courses. Never came up against that because the numbers worked out, so we didn't have to do that, whether we wanted to or not. We don't have to decrease any music lessons because I have the staffing to maintain it the way it is. We don't have to offer credit for PE for participation in outside activities because we have the staffing for that. And the last one is I don't have to have elementary teachers teach any course needed because I don't need them to teach other than the core courses. So I just wanted to close with that because I know it's important to the members of that committee to see where their work went to as we went along. So that closes a long presentation, but I was asked to leave no stone unturned, so I probably have done that. So
Well,
what questions do we have that,
yeah.
I will talk about the class size is, we're looking at about 28 student model. That's what I anticipate would probably be happening at the middle school. That was kind of what I was trying to eye up as I looked at the efficiencies. And many times we have upper 30s, mid 30s in 7th and 8th grade classes. And in 6th grade, we've been working in the 3-person model at trying not to ever put more than 34 students in the classroom because that's all that will fit. And when you try to fill team B and C in some of the sections, any class where students don't come out for something customized, we're up against 34 every time. And this allows us to spread those students out and get under, we should be under 30, and the average should be under 30, and of course, you may have some that go a little bit higher, but things just get spread out a lot more evenly because of, once again, probability going to work for us.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
I just had one comment that I had wanted to say when we were talking about the 2x5 team that I want to be sure I say. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the board did receive 2 emails from current 6th grade teachers strongly supporting the 2x5 team model. So I wanted you to know that in case.
Well, and we actually had Mr. Alvarez was going to be here tonight to actually speak to you and tell you why he believes strongly in dispersing the ESL students out, that this is the correct time in our evolution, our maturation as a district, and to do that. However, he is a new father and is on leave right now, and I don't think he had permission to leave the house. So.
Okay, good.
But you may hear from him
At least
anyway.
not after 8.
Okay, well, I very much appreciate this very, very thorough report. Did you have something to
I
add?
just wanted to add to that you did a really nice job on just outlining for us here and describing tonight. And it has really helped me figure out, what you're proposing. And I'm really excited about having more, a middle school model there in the 6th grade, mid-level. And I think that looks great. Thanks. That's
You're welcome.
much clearer now.
And once again, it wasn't saying that the 3x3 model was bad. It was just saying that under the current situation, it's probably not the best model to continue. And it's not the ideal model either by any stretch of the imagination. It's the one that gets the job done. And sometimes that's not as exciting, but there can be elements of it that are creative and fun to work with too. So.
Good, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff.
Okay. We have one item for individual action, and it's a resolution for termination and non-renewal of probationary licensed staff. You have the resolution in your packet. I'd ask for a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved.
Moved by Julie. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ellen. Does that need to be a roll call?
It's a resolution. It needs to be
So roll call? Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Fossum.
Aye.
Maple.
Aye.
Iverson.
Aye.
Pritchard.
Aye.
Cornell.
Aye.
Stratmore.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye. And I do just want to highlight for the public, just to be absolutely clear, that at our last meeting, we had this resolution discontinuing and reducing educational programs, and that was a very long list, and we tried to make that clear that that was not the definitive list, but was just the largest possible universe of potential cuts. And we are not needing to make any of those cuts tonight because of the retirement plan and the FTE that were generated by the early retirement incentive plan. And so we're able to reassign staff that might be reduced, as Mr. Peshta mentioned, to open positions within the district. And so, again, we're very grateful to those teachers who decided to take advantage of that program so that we did not have to lay off any of our regular staff. Okay,
Terry,
on. Yes,
I
John.
ask a question about that? Because we have quite a list of programs here that we were cutting. And is this saying that we're not cutting any of those programs or positions anymore, or what?
What we tried to make really clear last time was that at both the high school and the middle school, they had identified all the areas where possible cuts might occur.
Right.
As Jeff has just indicated to you for middle school, and as Joel would indicate to you at the high school level, based on the FTE that has been restored to the middle school and high school through the early retirement incentive, and the ability to shift the last two individuals that are going to need to have part of, as we talked about, art and business, those actually going back either to the ALC or to the high school. There will be no cuts for any of our staff that were identified on that sheet. So basically, all of those were just where we potentially needed to go, but now that we've gone through the process and had the early retirement incentive in place, all those identified possible reductions are now off the table. That's the 50-cent answer to the 5-cent question, which is yes, everything that's listed there is no longer going to be reduced.
Okay, including the Gates program and the other program?
No.
This is...
Right. This would be for high school and middle school only in terms of those pieces. The Gates program still remains reduced, and the cluster program will take its place.
Okay. Okay. On to the consent grouping, and just to remind you, there were a couple of items in the table file that were
Was not going there. So.
that were added to the consent grouping. Anything anybody wants to pull from the consent grouping? Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent grouping? Moved by Noel. Is there a second? Second by Ann. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the consent grouping, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. You have information in your memo regarding parent attendance at parent-teacher conferences for the last couple of years. Future meetings coming up, 2 in May, Monday, May 9th, and Monday,